Hey guys. This is Fiction Life. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see third part what if Harry Potter and Hermione found the path to the perfect future. Here is short summary. When Harry and Hermione, guided by Luna's wisdom, uncover a hidden path of magic long ignored by the wizarding world, they set out to shape a future free from war and manipulation. But every choice comes with a cost. Can they truly create the perfect future, or will their path change everything they know forever? But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Hermione had confronted Shala on her island, and informed the Dragon Elder of Harry's condition, and asked for help or guidance. Shala had taken things in her own claws, and taken a short flight, relatively speaking, from her island at an undisclosed location, to London, also an undisclosed location. The trip was quite exciting for Hermione's part, as she had never ridden a dragon before, in fact would never had thought of it let alone risked it. The actual flight was much less eventful than anyone would expect. Shala had a natural shield that allowed her to slip through the air, or lack of air easily. She had no idea how to calculate speed without an external reference point, but she was sure they were traveling several hundred miles per hour, but that was mostly because while riding south towards London, they eased up behind and to one side of a pair of Tornado fighter bombers. It was a testament to the professionalism and skill of the pilot that he did not lose control of his aircraft. The Rio, however, rolled his eyes and muttered, "Oh bloody hell, not again." Shala, however, did not tarry, and the two military men were shocked to see an unprotected young woman at this altitude, not only 30,000 feet above what was survivable, but exceedingly cold, and here she was, riding a dragon at the operational ceiling for the RAF's high-performance machine. Hermione grinned and gave a shy little wave as they stared at her. It did not take very long at all and the great dragon was circling in on the precise center of the Black University compound. Since they were under a dragon magic disillusionment, there was nothing to be seen externally, but a momentary ripple in the sky. The two females in Harry's life settled at the bottom point of the inverted pyramid, and as Shala settled sewn on her haunches, Hermione scrambled off. She threw off her outer jacket and rushed towards the closest entrance to the compound, when Shala called her back. "Wait, remember, you will need." Hermione skidded to a stop and returned to the dragon. "Sorry, I am just worried about Harry." "All right, where?" The dragon extended her left paw and the toes and claws dug into the decorative stone pavers. The conversation took place while in flight. "I brought the little dragon so you can recharge it, so we can re-establish the connection between me and Harry. That would take too long. Days. To recharge the dragon or which?" Hermione didn't quite understand the context of the statement. The small dragon would work. But it would take days. 3 or more for you to sing its song. Do you understand? "I see, we could use the small one, but it would take too long, so is there a faster way?" Yes. What Hermione saw was not in words, but more in feelings and pictures. After the feeling overwhelmed her and she was able to take in the required procedure to be followed, she just hung on for the ride, and was somewhat bemused as they passed the RAF aircraft. Her sharp eye did, however, notice one of the names stenciled on the side of the cockpit. Lt. Creevy. She gave a shy wave and sighed when she realized there would be more explanations upcoming. Shala placed her paw flat on the ground between herself and Hermione, and nibbled at a loose scale, jerked it out and spit it out. "Take scale." Hermione picked it up and placed it into her bag, and advanced on the dragon's paw, and with her wand created a small cut in the flesh of the creature. Blood welled up and made a small globule balanced between the scales. She then took her wand and cut her hand, making a fairly large slice by comparison. She pressed the incision hard on the cut in the dragon's paw. She could feel the blood burning through her own veins. After a few moments she felt deep within herself Shala's voice. "Enough." She staggered back and almost fell from the power of the connection between herself and Shala. Unbidden she held her hand and arm up toward the dragon and Shala took Hermione's arm into her mouth. The tongue licked away the blood, leaving a healed hand. "Go. Help him." "Yes, my lady." Hermione bowed to the dragon and jogged away towards the entrance of the underground warren. All levels of the courtyards and gardens were lined with windows and patios to allow light into the facility, as well as comfortable places to be. Behind every window were people, lining all levels, watching and commenting on the incredible action before them. These things would cement Hermione's reputation as much more than just a brainy witch, much more than the smartest witch of her generation. The actions of this day were the basis of stories and tales of true love and adventure and the sacrifices that people in love would do for each other. Sirius met her at the door and guided her to the infirmary where Harry lay, inert, his brain activity off the charts, and yet no discernible brain function. Back in fourth year, during the Yule Ball, Harry had done what appeared to be a miracle, repairing the damage done to Lavender and Parvati by Dumbledore's manipulation and penchant for obliviation. This was for the most part just plain Harry dumb luck, where the circumstances lined up to work together for good and not evil. Harry's connection with Shala was at its highest point, and she was cooperating with him there without his knowledge, knowing that there was something off about these two young women. Shala had provided a format that Harry could work with to repair the damage done to them. Without that help, Harry would never have been able to do it on his own. Hermione entered the infirmary where Harry lay. She started to climb onto the bed where he lay, but the healer stopped her. First, you need to be checked out. You are running on adrenaline, Miss Granger. We have been watching you for the past hour. By now you must be quite thirsty, your temperature is up and I'd be willing to bet you are feeling faint from low blood sugar. Mr. Potter will wait 20 minutes while you take care of yourself. Look, even your dragon is taking a nap. Hermione let herself be distracted enough to watch the screen, where indeed, Shala was curled up in the sun sleeping like some great feline. Hermione looked at Harry lying there, seemingly asleep, and at rest, and sighed. Very well, Sirius, you keep an eye on him. Sirius nodded, taking his orders. Assistant healer Jalpa will be checking you over. Let her do her job, please. Senior healer Marcus Pomfrey referred the young woman into the exam room. It was proper practice to do so. In the current magical society, male healers rarely dealt with female patients, except as referrals and advisors. As the door closed, Hermione had a fleeting thought of the old medical dolls that were used to point out aches and pains and symptoms without the embarrassment and indignity of actual personal exposure. Please remove your clothes, at least the dragonhide. I cannot use diagnostic spells through dragonhide. Again Hermione sighed. Her mundane practitioner was much the same. This healer looked as if she had some mundane experience. So where are you from? I don't recognize your accent. Something Balkan. I am from Romania. I met Charles Weasley while an intern working on Dragon Reservation. She poked Hermione with various wands and spells. It was quite surprising when the healer used the heart monitor spell. She felt what seemed to be a cold stethoscope on various points of her chest and back. Oh, that's cold. How does that work? Jalpa looked at her chart. It is a simple heart diagnostic. The cold touches are a traditional reference point, so they tell me. I wouldn't mind looking at those spells someday. She grimaced. She unbuckled her belt and slipped out of the leather pants and boots, and they dropped to the floor with a clunk. Sit on table, please. More poking and prodding. Her eyes were checked, her lungs listened to, her tongue examined, all the while a dictating quill was taking notes from the various diagnostics. Lie on table, on your belly. Please. Why? This had never happened in a mundane examination. Because you have a laceration your back, I must clean and repair this. When did this happen? Hermione flexed her shoulder and realized that the stiffness there was from a gash on her back, right shoulder about halfway down her scapula and a good 4 inches long, and it would turn out fairly deep. Her back was also covered with blood and feeling a bit sticky at this point. With a snip, Hermione's sports clothes and camisole top hit the floor. She could feel the healer irrigating and cleaning the wound, and finally, after making sure there was no contamination, a surgical mending spell, making the flesh bond back together, layer by layer until she was all the way to the surface, and a final pass, the skin was sealed. There, done, there should be minimal scarring, but if there is, come see me, I was first in my class in cosmetic procedures. She sat up and flexed her shoulder, feeling a minor bit of swelling, which was normal for something like this. I wonder what happened to cause this. From what I saw, and the others were saying, When you were flying towards spiders, the bird got you at least once. Realization struck as Hermione recalled just how close the rock had come to her. Dilly. An elf popped in. Please clean and repair Miss Granger's clothes. Yes, Miss Healer. I'm done with you. Here is some tea and light food for you, and I want you to drink at least 2 liters of water in the next 12 hours, please. When you are done here, there is a shower in the other room, and you are free to go. Thank you, Healer Jalpa. I appreciate your fine work. She hesitated a moment, thinking. May I make an appointment with you for next week? I have a few questions I wish to ask. Very well. Call the front desk. I will be on day shift all week. Thank you. Dilly appeared with all her clothes clean and repaired. Here you go. Miss, give to me please, knickers for cleaning. Jalpa had left the exam room, and Hermione shrugged, and stepped out of her knickers and handed them to the elf. Thank you, Dilly. I am going to clean up now. And she entered the bathroom, and into a hot shower. Out in the private part of the healer's office, Jalpa was speaking with Senior Healer Pomfrey. She had a laceration 14 centimeters long and just over 3 centimeters deep on her right shoulder, that was obviously caused by a magical creature. I believe it was the bird. It looked and acted similar to the injuries from the dragons I have repaired. If it were the spiders, I believe the wound would be septic already. She didn't even realize she had been injured until I pointed out the blood on his shoulder and back. Healer Pomfrey nodded in acceptance. He had seen all manner of wound in his years as a healer, not specifically from a dragon or a rock, but things similar. He had once seen a dead man who had been mauled by a hippogriff, and the wounds were very similar. Hermione stepped out of the shower and dried herself, and dressed quickly. Winky had stepped in and made sure her clothes were perfect, and as the lady was dressing, her hair was plaiting itself and all in place by the time her boots were on. With a smile and thanks for her elven friend, the young woman darted out of the washroom towards her destination. In Harry's room, Sirius was watching, as an assistant healer monitored Harry's vital signs. Hermione entered the room in a rush, followed closely by Senior Healer Pomfrey, who was speaking. Before I let you do anything, I want you to describe exactly what you are doing, so we can monitor the procedure, and keep him safe as well as yourself. You have just been through an ordeal, and I suspect you will be coming down from your high in a few moments. And I don't want you to have any bad reactions because you are not prepared to do what you need to do. Do you understand me? He had worked his way around and inserted himself between her and Harry, not allowing her to do anything just yet. Sirius stepped up behind the intent witch, and reached over her shoulder and took the wand out of her hand, as it was beginning to move toward the healer. His arms surrounded the young woman and held her tightly as he whispered in her ear. Harry is safe, just not connected with us right now. Mr. Cromwell has checked on him and said he was in there working on the problem from his side, and other than being unconscious he is just fine. Harry wouldn't want you to hurt yourself now, would he? Finally, some of the tension went out of the girl as her body slowed down, and her shoulders slumped. Sirius gently guided her over to a chair next to the bed and made her sit. He almost had to physically lower her into the chair as her body gave out. And he knelt in front of her. Now, what kind of godfather would I be if the most important person in Harry's life was hurt or injured? You, young lady, are my responsibility when he can't watch over you. You do know that he watches over you all the time. When you are reading, studying, running, everything. Gently, he slipped her wand into her arm holster and took her hands, and looked her in the eyes. You are the reason Harry lives, the reason that he does all the things he does, because he wants to make a better world just for you. Don't ruin that, please. She nodded after a moment as a tear made its way down her cheek. Sirius leaned forward and hugged her as she buried her face into his shoulder. Harry is very much like James was with Lily. He would do anything for her, anything at all. She got cravings with her pregnancy and James would go anywhere in England to find what she needed or desired. Even before she was pregnant, she made a comment about something in the cottage they were living in, and what he did was send her to go shopping with Alice, and while they were away, he shanghaied me and Frank and Mooney, and we did a 2-hour remodel and room addition for her, a complete potions lab, state of the art, before she came back. It's still there at the back garden of the Godric's Hollow cottage. Hermione smiled at this as he wiped away her tears. Now, you feel a little better. I thought you would have calmed a bit while Healer Jalpa fixed you up. Well, she did, but while I was getting cleaned up, I got to thinking and had to get in here and help my Harry. As you can see, he is in good hands. So, Healer Pomfrey was asking you about the procedure that you are going to do. She dabbed her eyes and nodded. I was too excited to do it before. I have to calm down and meditate before I begin. I don't know what has come over me. Maybe because I have dragon blood in me now. Healer Pomfrey snapped taut attention at this, and silently did some diagnostics over the girl. He did some very specialized spells that examined the blood and showed all that was in that blood, with long specific readouts on the sample. This was a test that could define whether a person had magical creatures in their heredity, and was originally designed to test for lycanthropy. Interesting. You wouldn't know it if you weren't specifically looking for it. Miss Granger, your blood has taken on the characteristics of dragon blood, and yet is still completely human. Fascinating. Do you have an animagus form? She shook her head no. I was turned into a feline by a polyjuice accident once though. The healer's eyes went wide. Oh, my. We do have some testing to do, don't we? He turned to his assistant. A complete, and I mean complete medical history on Miss Granger. She is just as interesting as Mr. Potter. Now, what can you tell us? Be as specific as you can, and while you are doing that, I am going to have my assistant look up a few things on interspecies blood transfusions. Well, while you are doing that, Hermione grinned at him. I was also petrified by the reflected gaze of a basilisk back in second year. Pomfrey and the assistant both rolled their eyes. It was almost 12 hours later before Hermione got to the point where she could help Harry. She tried to meditate, but her adrenaline crashed and instead she fell asleep in the chair at Harry's side. When she woke 7 hours later, a water bottle was thrust into her hand by Healer Jalpa. You obviously needed a nap, but here, you need to drink in order to help your friend. After drinking and eating, and getting herself together, she finally was able to attend to Harry. She had described what to expect, both from herself and from Harry, and those gathered agreed to watch and not interfere. Shala, I am ready to enter. Good. Shala was a dragon of few words. Hermione climbed on the bed and straddled Harry, and the bed had been raised a bit so he was in an almost sitting position with her over his lap. She put her hands on his head, her thumbs on his cheeks, and as she was doing this, had a sudden flash of Mr. Spock doing his Vulcan mind thing. His eyes opened and she dove in. She entered the maelstrom, and felt the massive presence of Shala with her inside her at her side. Now what? You need to get their attention. Hermione climbed up on a high spot in the architecture of Harry's mind. From her viewpoint, she could see the Harrys all crowding around a single point, trying to interface with that point, and being bounced back, and when they hit another, or hit the walls of the chamber, sometimes were fractured and had to gather themselves together, one bit at a time, and some were split into multiples of the same image, and were eerily reminiscent of the multiple Tom Riddle that had been sent into the afterlife. As a girl, Hermione had acquired a skill that was not as feminine as is common, but useful, especially in calling a taxi or getting attention. She stuck 2 fingers in her mouth and let loose a piercing whistle. Several of the avatars looked up. She spoke in a commanding voice. All you, get over there on that wall, in numerical order, lowest to highest. She pointed to the wall farthest from the access port. A few shuffled off obediently, some ignored her, some advanced on her, with questions or aggression. She pulled out her wand, and cast stinging hexes towards some and sent them on their way toward the lineup. Those who seemed to be aggressive, she either hexed or stared down. If she were so inclined, and looked at herself, she was a Valkyrie on a prominence, hair flying in the wind, shining armor glistening. After some doing, the avatars that were not lined up on the wall, were gathered around her pedestal, that is, except for those that had gone to pieces and could not gather themselves together. Hermione stepped down from the prominence, and advanced on the I/O port that connected to Harry's higher mind. She pondered what was going on in his mind, what he had created out of some perceived necessity. She turned and looked at all the Harryflections, who were lining the wall as well as those who were still attempting to gather themselves together. She snorted inside at the sight of two avatars trading pixels back and forth, attempting to sort themselves. She asked as she stood over them. Are you learning from each other? The Harrys looked up and spoke as one. Yes, it is very enlightening. We are learning new things. We are synthesizing new ideas. Hermione pondered this. So, each of your selves concentrates on a single subject. They looked at each other and then turned to her. Something new. Really? What do you mean by new? Like no one has ever seen before. What else can you tell me? Left Harry spoke alone. If it works, we will change the world. How? Right, Harry spoke. We will be able to do magic without hiding. She was intrigued. How would you do that? Both Harrys grinned. Hiding in plain sight. She raised an eyebrow with a question on her face. The two Harrys sniggered and went back to sorting pixels. She pondered these two entities and huffed. Well, if you are not going to tell me specifics, I will just be about repairing your brain clog. The portal to the higher mind was covered by a pile of pixelized Harry bits left over from the multiple collisions. She prodded the loose pile, as they roiled and bubbled over each other, trying to find a mate to build apart. She prodded a few pixels with her toe and considered a sorting spell to help move them along their way, but within seconds, the loose pile surged and flowed up her leg, quickly climbing up her body and enveloping her in place. Outside in the real world, the watchers might have noticed a slight intake of breath as Hermione's eye twitched away from Harry's for just a millisecond. As it was, no one did notice. Healer Jalpa was distracted by Healer Pomfrey asking her about something, and Sirius had just turned to speak to Moony, who had arrived from Potter Keep. Internally, Hermione was frozen in place, almost totally encased in glowing orange pixels. She was upright, fixed in place, her back arched and her nervous system on fire as the feelings bounced back and forth between her body and the pleasure centers of her brain. The effect was a continuous orgasm, which she shuddered to bring under control. It was at a time like this, that if she could think, that she understood how Harry managed to fight through the pain of the Cruciatus. It would not have surprised her that he, in whatever for brought up these feelings in her, and wondered as she could feel the imprint of each and every pixel crawling over her body. Externally in the hospital room where Harry was lying on the bed, she did not move a muscle, or make any outward action. Moony was talking with Sirius, quietly, but his attention was drawn away by something impinging on his consciousness, something primal, compelling. It took a few moments real time for him to realize the smell of a female in heat. Sirius, come out in the hall please. Sirius looked sharply at his friend. Why? What's wrong? I'm staying with Harry. Moony ignored Sirius' protests. Healer Pomfrey, please step out. Healer Pomfrey did so at the look Moony gave him. Once in the corridor, Moony closed the door and stood in front, blocking access. Hermione needs privacy with Harry, and we need to respect that. Healer Pomfrey began to protest, but Moony interrupted. Healer Jalpa will keep things under control. Sirius looked quizzically at his friend and was about to say something, but Moony raised one eyebrow and subtly tapped his nose. Sirius recognized the gesture from the Marauder days, a sign that the wolf in Moony sensed something. Sirius extended his senses a bit, but here in the corridor of the hospital, there were just too many competing odors. He looked to his friend and whispered, "What? Private, it's between Harry and Hermione, and I will thank you to leave it at that." Lupin turned to Healer Pomfrey and asked, "Do you know if they have a Reuben here at the commissary?" As they walked away, Lupin's iron grip on Sirius' arm kept him from going back into the room. Back inside Harry's mind, Hermione struggled through the sensory overload, and when she was just about to give up and pull out, Shala was present there in the back of her mind, and gave her the nudge she needed to slip free of the assault. The pixels fell off, much like ice chips bouncing off a car windshield. The mass of pixels piled up at her feet, almost as deep as her knees, and roiled about there like some kind of cubified flame. Hermione gasped for breath, her avatar body shuddering with the aftershocks of the sensory assault. She swayed and got her bearings. Wow. That was intense. It was. You humans can be very focused. It can be a good thing. So what do I do with this? She gestured at the pixels trying to reclimb her leg. Send them home. Hermione took out her virtual wand and banished the pixels with a command. To your scattered bodies, go. The pixels were dispersed, each flying away to the various Harrys lined up around the walls of the room. Once free of the mass, Hermione was able to move and did so, stepping to the line she had commanded earlier, starting with Avatar number 1. You are the oldest. Yes, I am the first. I am the one who extracted the information from the piece of Tom Riddle. I destroyed all the dark magic in his fragment and stored the memories for the Overmen to use. So you are pretty much a complete image of Harry, that is, my Harry. Yes, Hermione, I am. Good. Follow me. She turned and strutted away, over to the I.O. port, looking over her shoulder with a sly smile. She stood to the right and gestured for Harry too to stand to the left. She cast a sonorous so all could hear. Every one of you, in order, lowest number to highest, one at a time, no pushing, no line jumping. Now. The hundreds of avatars were mostly obedient, some tried to line jump. But they arranged themselves in some kind of order. All right, there are a lot of loose pixels lying about. I want all loose pixels here in a pile. Now, she pointed to an area on the floor of the virtual space. It was as good as an Accio spell. It came to quite a pile. One at a time. You first. She pointed at Harry too. Call all your loose pixels to yourself. Harry too did so, and several popped out of the pile, and when they hit his body, they were absorbed like water into a sponge. He stepped back into his position guarding the portal. He pointed at the next in line. Next. The line went on for several hours, each avatar gaining some pixels, and once having done so, walked through the portal and into the higher mind. Once the last of the avatars went through the portal, Harry too asked what he should do, stay or go. Hermione said that it was all right for him to stay, but from this point on there was a limit of 5 avatars at any time. Any more and the processing burden was too great and the Overmind lost track of bodily functions. You are going to have to figure out a better way of processing data. This method caused a data crash. My Harry was not getting enough sleep and losing track of time. Poll your many and find out if any of you have read on multitasking or data dumps. She poked at the few pixels that were still in the pile, gently touching each with a finger, and assessing the feeling or reaction she got from them. From the orange fiery one she felt arousal, lust and powerful urges. From the light blue-green she felt calm, compassion. From the gold she felt loyalty and determination. From the dark red, bravery and focus. There were a large number of green and silver, she suspected were somehow related to how the sorting had assessed the incoming student. The green was a feeling of cunning and cleverness, and the silver ambition. She gathered up a double handful of these pixelized jewels and let them run through her fingers. This time, when they landed on the stone beneath their feet, they were absorbed and gone. Harry too stepped forward. Come with me, please. She followed, and he offered her his arm. She took it. After a circuitous route, they ended up in a section where there were row upon row of filing cabinets, some open, most closed, assorted papers scattered about, some drawers stuck and jammed, some rolling open of their own accord. They passed the cabinets and were there at the front of the brain, where there was signs of battle and damage done. There was a place on the wall where there had been a breach, that had been repaired. This was obviously the place where the fragment of Tom Riddle had been ensconced. The burn marks on the walls showed the great powers that had been contained. I have done as much as I can, and I had the help of several of the others. Will you try? She bit her lip, wondering what to do, and remembered the memories of Harry's foray into the minds of Lavender and Parvati, and the virtual representations that he had encountered. Reasoning this out, she decided to give it a try. I am going to start small and see how it goes. Monitor Harry closely, please. Harry too nodded and called up his own diagnostic, which showed body functions, mental functions, and the magical levels flowing throughout the body they were in. He nodded. The levels are all coming down and he will wake up soon. We have at least an hour before you will be needed outside. Hermione turned to the massive damage before her and slowly, one at a time, repaired scars, burned damage, reworked hasty patches so that the solid stone of the wall before them was made whole in a solid mass. Soon, all the damage was gone, but the actual point at which the breach was made was a whorl in the grain of the stones. A bit more work and that area was sealed, and when she was done, there was a bronze plaque. On this spot, October 31, 1981. Lily Potter gave her life to protect. Her son Harry James Potter. Her sacrifices were not made in vain. Those who go on before us are always there as long as we remember them. Hermione looked upon her work and Harry too put his arm around her shoulders. That's nice. I like it. Hermione looked him in the eyes. I know, you. He said it to me. They began to walk back to the portal. So, what kind of computer shall we build? Well, a Cray is the most powerful and fastest at this point, but we need a way for the information to input and output. So the real problem is the interface. It would seem so. That is what caused this whole mess, you know. Harry too nodded. I lost control of it. There was just too much I was trying to do at once. Healer Jalpa watched as the bodily functions of her two patients went from a mind rush overload of brain function to a calm steady wavelength as if in deep meditation. She could detect some healing magic in the front of Harry's mind which she recorded closely to study later. She watched as the two lines of brain function separated and the young woman came up out of her trance and the patient himself went into a deep sleep state. Hermione opened her eyes and took a deep breath, and let it out with a rush. She sat back and stretched her neck and rolled her shoulders to get the stiffness out of them. She turned to Healer Jalpa and asked, "How long?" Healer Jalpa looked at her readouts. 2 hours 7 minutes. Hermione rolled her head once more. Where are Sirius and Healer Pomfrey? Mr. Mooney made them leave early on. I understand that he is a lichen. Yes, is that a problem? No, not at all, but as a lichen he can smell things before the normal human can. I was about to say something but he caught it first. I believe he was looking out after your privacy. Hermione wondered. How so? I could read the diagnostics. While in contact with Mr. Potter, your body began to exude pheromones, your Bartholin gland was working overtime and that is, your body became very aroused. Hermione took a quick inventory of the feelings in her body and clothes and made a mental grimace at the sticky feeling. Let me check out Mr. Potter while you go take a quick shower, okay? The young woman agreed and the healer went about her tests and diagnostics on her patient while she went about the second shower of the day. As she took off her clothes again, she could smell the overpowering musky smell in her knickers, and as she was about to set them aside to be washed again she had an idea. She put the knickers in a sealed bag and into her carryall for later. As she entered the shower, she called her friend Winky. Could you be a dear and get me some fresh clothes, a dark outfit like I had before, and some undies, okay? Winky was glad to do so, and the young woman washed herself once more. Harry felt as if he were in a dream. He entered his mental architecture and greeted his number 1 avatar. What happened? You were overloaded, and had a system crash. I have orders from Hermione that we are not to have more than 5 avatars working at any time. I intend to enforce that request. My own mind rebels against me. Don't get in a huff, we both know she is right. True. What else? She was attacked while here, Shala helped and she overcame. Attacked by who? What? Libido. Lust. Arousal. They swarmed her. Oh Merlin. She's going to be. Don't worry, she was flirting with us right after. No harm done. Show me. The memory of the incident was transferred. There's not much to be done about it, so, I guess that we will just deal. Harry too agreed. They entered the file cabinet zone. He looked about at the damage done in the mind riot, the scattered papers and memories, and with a series of gestures, made everything go back to its assigned place. We need a better interface between the files and the minds and the outside world. Harry 337 came up with something of a plan, but we need to work out the details. What did he come up with? He had an idea to link the mind, the separate parts of our mind to external ports, specifically the mirrors. How would we do that? Magic. Of course, the load would be light, both metaphorically and physically. Well, not physically, but literally, as light itself is a massless particle, at least for our purposes. So, instead of one mind or mage manipulating 1,000-kilo rock, 1,000 mages manipulating 1,001-kilo rocks. Exactly. Let's concentrate on one project for a while, make this interface work. There is one other thing. Hermione spoke with 6 and 9. And they have an idea that will change everything. And how? Hide in plain sight. What is that supposed to mean? Remember the story we read where someone made a joke that they were Jedi, and used magic to make everyone in the Muggle world think they were actually Jedi. Yeah, that was a petty good story, I thought. Where do we come from, according to Shala? Some planet in the Belafrin sector. And how did we, that is, magicals, get here to Earth? On a dragon ship. Oh, I see where this is going. So all we have to do is create an entire civilization, technology, ships, and what else? An entire culture. Sure, I'll get right on it. Next Tuesday I'll write with you. Harry too snorted. Maybe the week after. I have a few ideas. Hermione had taken a shower, gotten dressed, and went out of the hospital room in search of food and he godfather-in-law. She came upon Sirius and Moony comfortably ensconced in a booth in the commissary. She nudged Sirius. Shove over, old man. Sirius blearily looked up at her as she spoke. So, is my boy all right now? She sat down and gratefully accepted the cup of tea that Moony had poured for her. He's sleeping now, and will wake up in an hour or so. We have sorted out the problem and it won't be happening again, I think. How do you know that? Moony inquired. I gave his mental avatar orders to not allow more than 5 avatars at any time. He had well over 400 working and overloaded his inputs. The men were shocked. 400? How is that possible? She looked at him with a wry smile. It's Harry. Why, sometimes I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Moony looked at her with a jaundiced eye. Quoting Lewis Carroll, Hermione. She tipped her head regally. The White Queen, Sir Wolf. Sirius looked back and forth between the two, rolled his eyes, and muttered. You used to do that with Lily too, intellectuals. Faye. Shut up and drink your tea. Patty, Harry's going to be all right, thanks to Hermione and her dragon. Or should I say, their dragon. Hermione sipped her cup and sat it back on the table. I don't know whose is whose, but Shala thinks of Harry as a favorite pet. Both men looked at the teen girl in shock. In the infirmary, Harry was waking up. Healer Pomfrey and Healer Jalpa were discussing the readouts and the data they had collected. Harry quietly eased his legs over the side of the bed, and was about to sneak away, when Dippy the elf appeared and asked him if he waned his clothes. This got the attention of the healers and he was forced back into the bed as they went into a mad rush of diagnostics and exploratory spellwork. He withstood this for a few minutes before he said, Enough. I know you mean well, but I am fine, I just want to get out of here, please. Healer Pomfrey had heard about the trials and tribulations of dealing with one Harry Potter from Madame Pomfrey at Hogwarts, so he made a counteroffer. We will let you go under certain conditions. 1. No more of these overloading your mind scenarios, and 2. You have to come back tomorrow for a quick checkup, no more than a half hour, okay? Harry could agree with that, so in a jiffy he was dressed and out of there before they could change their minds. Moony and Padfoot were arguing about something, and Harry was getting dressed. He sent out a mental message to Shala. Thank you for saving me. You are welcome. But it was your mate. My mate. She is very possessive. I like her. That's good, because I do too. Shala paused, and Harry could feel it. Is there something wrong? Yes. This has advanced my time. The egg is ready. It is time. Harry sprinted towards the commissary. Hermione was becoming aware of his mental presence. Harry, is that you? He burst through the doors in a rush. All eyes in the room turned to him. We need to get out to where Shala is. She needs us. It's her time. Hermione gasped and the two teens sprinted away towards the guards where Shala was writhing on the ground, her wings and tail knocking over park benches and planters. The memories of Shala were irreplaceable, because they had nowhere to back themselves up. So in an instant Sirius bored a hole, a tube, really, that dropped down through the center of the plaza into the great viewing room, and connected to the holographic mylar sphere that comprised the center of that viewing room. As fast as they could move, the humans formed a chain, a bucket brigade of memory. Harry stood transfixed face to face with Shala as she expelled the memories to him, and Sirius and Hermione stood at either side of him pulling out an almost continuous strand of memory from either side of his head. After a bit, it became a steady flow on its own, and all they had to do was guide it toward the hole in the plaza, and down the tube where it would be stored. Human memory is wispy, grayish strings, like manipulating clouds. They were not, however, affected by wind, rain, or atmospheric travail. They were moved by way of intent. Harry's intent was that no matter what cost, his friend would be saved. And the people who had gathered just watched and waited while the memory flowed of its own accord into the hole. After what seemed to be an eternity, maybe 30 minutes, the flow stopped and they stood around wondering what was next. Inside Harry 2 through Harry 6 were hastily erecting their own holographic barrier and containing that which was coming across now Shala. In an instant of outside time, it was finished. Internally it was an eternity gathering and capturing the personality and magic that was Shala. And where it was where it would stay until the child was ready, or Harry forced it out. Finally Harry slumped to his knees and sat with his ankles under him. Sirius had a cap made, a bronze and stone cap inscribed with runes keeping the integrity of the sphere safe, both from outside as well as inside. Harry was exhausted, as was Hermione after the expulsion of all of Shala's memories. The great viewing sphere in the center of Black University was full up, and there was a constant monitoring of the sphere from all angles, trying to see the images and record them. Since the memories were unsorted, it would have been an improbable task. Nevertheless, the watchers watched and recorded. Shala had expelled the egg, and the worry now was that it might not be viable. The shell was thin and therefore fragile and they would not risk moving it, so the next best option was to build a nest around it. This nest, of course, had 4 heavy-duty industrial heaters warming it, with flames bellowing forth abundantly from the mechanisms. Meanwhile their friend's ancient body died. The problem they had to fix was something of a major thing. The common method for the queen to create her new body was to hatch a golden egg, that is an exact duplicate of themselves physically, reborn from the effective ashes of the former body. The queen then raised the youngling until it could survive on its own or with the protection of a trusted ally. And Harry was Shala's trusted ally in this case. In normal circumstances the queen would raise the youngling and then feed the collected memories back into the new shell starting with the most recent, and going backward until they were all stored properly, and the final step was to transfer the essence and internal magic to the child. The elder body then was usually eaten or abandoned, since other than food, it was useless to another dragon. Normal dragons did not come from golden eggs, normal dragons did not have the millennia of accumulated wisdom and intelligence that a queen did. That is not to say normal dragons were not intelligent, for they were, quite intelligent, but particularly feral, and prone to bursts of animal behavior. This is also what made a normal dragon dangerous, the sudden outbursts of instinctual activity which in the wrong case could get you eaten very quickly. So they watched and they waited. Back on the surface Harry lay almost inert against the flank of the now deceased body of his friend. Hermione sat beside him and leaned into him. They were both very weary. Harry was just barely processing, because he had the control of Shala's personality and essence filling up most of his mind. His few avatars that he had left were spending all their time keeping her contained. It was essential, for the egg bearing her new body had not yet hatched. All they could do was bide their time. Harry would not be able to go back to Hogwarts, and Hermione stayed with him, in spite of her desire to return to the normality of classes. It had been quite a struggle deciding whether to stay or to go. She knew as she stayed there would be trouble, but if she stayed away, it would be doubled. She shook her head, mentally rolling her eyes and tried to force out the influence of Harry's musical choices. He did, however, make sure to listen to music he knew she liked as well. Bother. This brought to mind Pooh and some of her first memories, reading and how happy it had made her. Deep down she realized that Harry made her as happy, even more so. She had enjoyed the previous year, staying in their secret tower, studying and reading and creating. The tournament had done so much for them, even in spite of the plots that had been set to entrap and control them. She pondered his actions and the theories that Luna had put forth about the myriad of timelines and following the paths to each and every reality. Luna had described a horrifying future, where she had ended up stuck with their former friend Ron. Hermione felt sad that their friend had grown into a very different person than they thought he had been. She knew that in none of the realities were they compatible and had been somewhat shocked when Luna described a future where she was married to Ron. The thought of it made her vaguely ill, for they really had nothing in common but Harry, and even then they had different aspirations and hopes for their relationships. She shook her head, clearing away the thoughts, and decided it was time to do something. Harry, it's time to get up now. We've done all we can. You have all of her personality collected. Now it will be just a bit of a balancing act until her new body catches up. Come, my wizard, get up. She was in front of him trying to pick him up off the plaza by pulling on both hands. He lay against the dragon's body looking as if he was a kid wanting to go back to sleep. Gimme a sec. Get up, you silly head. Or you'll get wet. Lemme be. Okay, Agua. I'm up. I'm up. Hermione had a bit of a premonition of some time in the future. With young boy Potters. The couple made their way to their quarters. Winky had made sure there were clothes and food and everything they would need. Sirius stood a few levels up the inverted pyramid looking down at the plaza and the dead dragon carcass. Charlie and his team of dragon wranglers were taking care of it, stripping off the hide to be turned into leather, meat for the various purposes, draining the blood and setting aside the bones to be used for wards and runic work. Shala had specified that her abandoned body was to be used to educate and feed and help improve the lot of all magical beings, and so, every bit was being rendered into their most useful components. Some days passed. The egg was about to hatch. In order to keep everything at optimal conditions, Sirius had his professors and care staff monitoring everything. It had been 42 days and the egg had been talked to, been kept warm by way of industrial space heaters. The pavers had become scorched on the plaza. Sirius sighed. He wanted this facility to reflect his new vision for the Black Name, and already it was getting burned up, stained, worn and abused. He looked out over the plaza. I guess we will just add the various stains to the curriculum, as a learning experience. The egg split open and the dainty dragon made her way clear. The artificial nest was banked around her and assorted food was put at a distance from where the eggshells lay. The dragon chilled was still in an instinctual state and began munching on the remainder of the eggshell as well as the membrane that was left over. Having ingested the materials, the reptilian child curled up to take a nap. The handlers did as they were instructed to do. They put the food out of reach and made the child work for her dinner. All the exercise made the joints unbend and flex, and the distance covered was exercise in building muscles. Harry sat on the edge of the nest for hours, slowly letting vapors of Shala out of his storage and into the creature, sips of Shala's essence and personality. None of this was a copy. It was all the real thing. The real stored magical essence of a great Hungarian horntail was leaking out of his core, and into the small beast. If Harry had not been able to capture Shala's essence on that terrible day, she would have been gone forever, and the small dragon would only grow up to be a normal Hungarian horntail, with the common attitude that they all seemed to have, that is to say, touchy. It took the better part of 2 weeks for Harry to finally offload all the alien influences in his head and body, and finally he was able to come down off the high rock of the nest they had built, for now Shala was fully sapient and aware that he was not food, but rather friend. She did, however, show a childish glee in her new body by tackling Harry whenever he wasn't looking, and licking him like some big scaly beagle. They had decided to a few weeks respite from the mind and memory management procedures, and work on other things. It had become cold in London where the university resided, and snow lay blanketing the terraces. The nest was still there and that's where Shala stayed most of the time, but she was venturing out, stretching her wings, so to speak. It would be another few months before she could fly from a dead stop, but for now she was taking hops from one terrace to another, mostly gliding. And some of the students and staff were occasionally used as bump stops for an incoming dragon. By the end of 2 weeks, though, Shala had consumed several tons of various bits of livestock, some toasted on the spot, and as a special treat, wards were set up on the central plaza where a medium-sized acromantula was port-keyed in to show the students and instruct them on the care, feeding and if necessary eradication of the magical arachnid. The spider, a mere 3 meters across, was continually frustrated by a dragon who was enjoying her new youth, herding the critter back and forth with growls, nips and the occasional flame. The spider never left alive, for it had ended up a snack. It would be more than 2 years before she would be large enough to flame like a proper dragon, and Harry carefully said nothing when the youngling accidentally flamed from the wrong end. In order to build up muscle and strength, Harry and Shala ran laps around the plaza. First she chased him, then he chased her, and they were each trying to outdo each other with their new feats of athleticism, leaping from level to level, from terrace to terrace, Harry working very hard to enhance his leaps with magic, channeling magic to his legs and torso. In fact, it helped build him up quite a bit as well, for he found if he did not channel magic to the appropriate muscle groups, he ended up with strains and pains, no matter how much stretching he did. It finally came a time when Shala was ready to retrieve her memories and stored history. Down in the great viewing room, the sphere holding the hundreds of thousands of years of memory was stretched tight. It had been fabricated out of a holographic mylar which allowed the memories inside to be viewed on its surface as a projection. Harry had used this same material as a trap while still fighting the war, when he had stretched it across the gates of Hogwarts, letting the outsiders think that there was someone standing there talking to them. This sphere was inert, because there was so many things inside, so many diverse and varied memories, and what could be seen was flashes and bits, like scanning through 1,000 channels at a fierce clip. Okay, how do we do this? I know you said it would be easy. But when we stored them, we didn't have time to sort. An inconvenience. If you're sure. Let's get this underway. Harry sighed and opened the portal from the center of the plaza down the tube they had created into the memory sphere. Shala moved forward and put her face over the well of memory and sniffed. It wasn't long before the first memory came up and into her waiting mind. It happened to be her last recorded memory from before the demise of her body, and the events leading up to that particular event. Once she had ingested that memory, she looked up at a terrace above and saw a young military man standing with her female pet. She winked at him. Up on the third terrace, Lt. Terence Creevy stood with his nephew, who was explaining the ins and outs of the magical world. He had known about his nephew's magical ability, because he was the boy's uncle and very close to the family, but now it was almost distressing to be in close proximity to a dragon without the protection of his aircraft. Not to mention that this dragon was winking at him. Lieutenant Creevy, I'd like to apologize for the last time we saw each other. Creevy turned and found himself face to face with the young woman who had been riding the great dragon a few months before. She extended her hand. I am Hermione Granger Potter, and the crazy man down there is my betrothed, Harry. I hope I didn't get you into trouble with your superiors. Being 15 years older than her, he made sure to not ogle the young woman, as well as she was the betrothed of a very powerful young man who had an intimidating pet. This was a very hard task, as Hermione had filled out in all the right places, and there was nothing about her that said, girl, anymore, but rather, woman. Calling on his officer training, he stood straight. Ma'am, no ma'am, there were no problems, thank you. Hermione was familiar with this behavior, she had been with her father during a reservist's family day. No need to be so formal, Colin is like family to us, so, you might as well be as good as. I am Hermione, but if you insist on being formal, Miss Granger will do. Well, Miss. Hermione, it's just that your dragon as well, I know about magic because the boys, but I never expected to see. Hermione laughed at the stumbling of the military man. Terence, may I call you Terence? He blushed and mumbled. Boys call me Unca Terry. Well then I guess we'll just call you Terry, okay? She raised her eyebrows and carried on. I understand about the things you mean. I mean, look at this. Here in the middle of London, the unseen university, hidden from sight, we have more than 2,000 mages right under the noses of mundane London, and they go by every day, without a clue that there is a dragon less than 5 kilometers from King's Cross. Sure, a small dragon, but a dragon, nonetheless. In the few years since I was introduced to the magical world, I have seen strange and wondrous things, things that are beyond, way beyond the norm, invisible people, attempted immortality, a class-wide attempt at genocide, creatures from myth and history. She gestured and Terry saw centaurs holding forth with dwarves and goblins, humans and seeming humans talking and arguing and reading and eating and being friends and colleagues. She stood on the edge of the terrace overlooking the plaza. Shala was ingesting memories at a prodigious rate, and Harry was there urging her to slow down a bit, not to overdo it. He was feeling a bit protective of his draconian friend. How long have you been in the magical world? 5 years ago Professor McGonagall came to my home and demonstrated that magic was real. Since then I have had a fairly intense relationship with magic. Terry snorted. If half of what the boys have said is true, then I would say your relationship with magic, he gestured to Harry and herself, is more than intense. Besides, You can't fool me. I have seen you at Angel's 40 on the back of a dragon. Hermione had the good taste to blush. Well, I suppose that you could say. She was interrupted by Harry, who had bounded up the terraces to her side. Hey, hi, I'm Harry. Terry Creevy, I'm their uncle. The men shook hands. We have been working with Shala here, retrieving her memories and getting her started on the next couple thousand years. Thousand. Yes, a queen dragon can live up to 5,000 years at a time. Your average dragon has no mind like the queen's, and last maybe 300 at best. Really? Wow. We never heard anything like that from Professor Hagrid. Colin injected. Harry nodded. Yeah, I learned it from the time I was with Shala. Luna had returned to Hogwarts but was unhappy. Her best friends were not there. She understood that problems Harry was having maintaining his equilibrium while carrying the mental essence of a dragon in his mind. She had been present at the open house of Black University with her father, as he was going to make a presentation on the hidden creatures, for the academia. She saw Harry and Stubby Boardman at the opening ceremony. She had seen Harry and Hermione reading the articles being put forth for consideration, and she had seen Harry collapse in front of the audience and the world. She stayed rooted to her seat watching Hermione on her flight to Shala the dragon and her altercation with a rock and the huge spiders. And when the dragon landed in the plaza of the university, Luna was watching from the first terrace as Hermione ran towards her man. Things quieted down overnight, and everyone was told by Stubby Boardman that Harry was now resting comfortably, only to find out that the next day the great old dragon died after laying her golden egg. Her father never did get to present his speech on the hidden creatures. Over the next few days, Luna was almost overwhelmed with potentials. She had become better in protecting herself mentally, and not being overwhelmed by the psychic blowback of seeing so many alternate realities and potential realities. She had gone into seclusion for almost 2 weeks at the Rookery and slowly dictated several of the more pressing potential realities and what she thought might be the triggers of these paths. September 1st came and she boarded the express, and spoke with Neville and several of other friends she had made. Somehow she did not miss the Weasleys or Malfoy. Padma sat with her in the train compartment and renewed her promise of protection for the fourth-year girl. Thank you, Padma. It is nice to have someone watching your back. It was so nice having Harry and Hermione stand up for me the last year. Luna sniffed a bit, her eyes watery. Padma noticed this and put her arm around the young Ravenclaw. Is everything all right, Luna? Has someone been bothering you? Luna leaned her head into the older girl's shoulder, tears beginning to run down her face. No, I am just worried about Harry, because, well, you know. Padma put both her arms around the blonde girl and held her closely. Yes, Luna, I do. They had both gotten a message via mirror once the express was underway. Hermione had made it a point to speak with each of their friends, updating them on the situation with Harry and Shala, and her intentions as well. The compartment that Luna and Padma were in had been inhabited by the membership of the Smart Girls table: Daphne, Padma, Luna, Penny, Katie and Angelina Spinnet, several others. They had been called together by Hermione, who filled them in on her plans for the upcoming semester, that is to stay with Harry come what may. The young ladies were not entirely surprised, since they had watched that relationship grow over the last 3 years. Hermione spoke with each from the mirror that was mounted on the wall, and she answered some of the questions thrown at her by her friends. Some she adamantly refused to answer, the very personal questions. Alika made her promise to come out and try out as a reserve Quidditch player. No excuses. I've seen you fly. Hell, the world has seen you fly, girl. You can't say that you don't know how. Hermione blushed. Later, after the various girls left to go about their business, Luna sniffled and clung to Padma for another minute and then made herself sit up straight and dry her tears. I know you are my friend, Padma, truly, I do, but they are so close to my heart, and the mirror is not enough. Padma started to speak, but Luna carried forth. It was easy to hide, easy to play. Loony, just make up outrageous things as metaphors for the things of the day. Padma nodded. They had discussed the writings of Swift among others. Harry gave me back my mother, as close as real as she could be, with the portrait. I left the portrait with my daddy, he is so lonely without her. Hermione is like, I don't know. Not a sister, but, well, I don't know how to describe it, what I feel. I know the only way the universe works is that if they are apart, we all die, every one of us, but I want to be there for them, be a part of them, their happiness. Does that make sense? Pale blue eyes met dark brown. Padma sighed. Luna. She spoke softly. What you are describing is love. Love for your friends, the desire for your friends to be happy and show them that you love them as much as they love you. The definition of love is that you care for their happiness more than your own. A lot of people will say that love is physically giving yourself to your lover, but I think it is much, much more than that. Luna waited for the Asian girl to finish. I think it is how far are you willing to go with them, and how far they will accept you, but then you will have to wait, because they will not be here for the foreseeable future, so it's best you just ponder this for now. Luna, don't get worked up about it, and if it is to work out, it will. Luna sniffed and nodded. I know that is the right path to follow. Padma, I can see the potential shedding away. She spoke with her eyes closed. And. Dotton. A potential for happiness. Padma smiled. That's good, Luna. I'm glad. The rest of the trip they spoke of runes and arithmancy. The tribunal that had taken over the government the previous season was finished with their work. Every Death Eater had been questioned and every known Death Eater and unmarked supporter had been captured. Now they had a decision to make. There had been several propositions as to what to do with these people, and it had taken a lot of arguing. It came down to this. A Death Eater had done horrible things to gain that mark on their arm, crimes against humanity. Therefore, they were not permitted to live. Once this vote was unanimous, the order was given and each and every one of the captured, marked Death Eaters was introduced to eternity. Since there was no actual confirmation that the veil was an actual portal into the afterlife, it was decided that the veil was to be sealed off so no one could accidentally fall through it. They tried to brick it up, but the bricks disappeared overnight where the veil itself brushed against it, so it was enclosed in a wrought iron cage that was bolted down beyond the reach of the veil. It was decided that Dementors were a dark construct and needed to be destroyed as well, so they would not be fed or tolerated any longer. So all known Dementors were forced into the lowest level of Azkaban and that facility was sealed with huge concrete and stone plugs, and the castle imploded on top of the pile. Once this was done, the wardstones having been destroyed, the former castle fortress sank into the sea, never to be seen again. Deep, deep below Hogwarts, one by one, each prisoner was taken from their enclosure and hooked up to a drainer. When this was turned on, their magic and their life was drained. The magic was added to the ambient magic powering the school and wards of the castle. Their life returned to Earth, for all life comes from Earth. Once the executions were finished, all the bodies were transfigured into stones and taken far out to sea and dropped over the side, never to be seen again. Every one of the marked ones had their lands and monies confiscated and those were placed into a reparations fund for the victims of Voldemort's war. Much land was up for sale and before those lands could be sold, manors and shrines and ritual circles were destroyed by cursebreakers, leaving nothing but scorched earth. Because there had been a lot of questioning covering decades of crimes, a lot of places were found and marked. Once the places were erased from the face of the earth, the centaurs and dwarves were given free rein to change the landscape into good natural habitat for various creatures and very little was sold to new buyers but rather the lands were held in trust for the beings of the magical world. The tribunal was disbanded but not until they voted on a keeper of the reins of power, and Arthur Weasley was voted in as Minister of Magic, but he had stated under no circumstances would he do more than a 4-year term, so someone should plan ahead for the next minister. They also polled the former Wizengamot and elected honest men and women to be a panel of judges, 5 of them, to pass judgment on all crimes and conflicts. These were limited to a 5-year term based on willingness to serve. Out of the remaining heads of departments, and the few left from the Wizengamot a council of senators were there to promote and vote for laws. 21 formed the Senate. As for the rest of the people of Britain and the UK, it was announced that on man, or woman, could represent the rights of any 1,000 people. All they needed were for 1,000 voting age people to say, I want this person as my representative, and that person to accept them as a constituent. This formed the Congress. It also formed an informal census. After the first elections, there were 39 representatives. Everyone hoped that soon there would be more. The representatives were all taking care of the needs of the people, and bringing up potential laws, and once they had one they all agreed on, they proposed it to the Senate. That body was expected to verify that the law did not conflict with mundane law, or any other previously held law, and once having done so, voted to either forward it to the minister or send it back for revision. Once it made it to the minister, he could send it back or sign it. Having done that, the law was thereafter to be enforced by the judges. It was basically the form of government with some checks and balances like that of the colonies. It kept ultimate power from being in one person's hands and made law a bit less of a circus and more of a procedure. Luna had gone back to Hogwarts for her 4th year, and expected that it would be a different situation, now that she had friends. Padma as an older year to watch over her, and several others who were acquainted with her via Harry and Hermione. She was sorely disappointed when it was found that Harry and Hermione were not at school. Harry's self-education had already taken him far beyond owls and newts, as he had absorbed enormous amounts of information through various sources. It was not known but to a few that he had taken the remains of Tom's soul bit and stripped it of all useful information and exorcised the rest, and his compartmentalization and internal study were the route to multiple masteries, much to the amusement of the pretty Ravenclaw. She regarded academic achievement as a necessary evil in the society in which she lived and preferred to learn by doing and experiencing and researching. Her time in Harry's Tower had opened her eyes to a wealth of knowledge and access to people beyond the norm. People like Nicholas and Pernell Flammel, people like Jack Gallinard and Charles Shepard, not to mention the various participants in the ill-fated Tri-Wizard tournament and the observers from the ICW and around the world. The school was aghast as they saw Harry collapse in front of an audience of thousands of magical academics in the opening of He Black University, and the amazing flight and confrontation between Hermione and Shala the Dragon. The flight was replayed again and again on the new mirrors that everyone seemed to have. The teacher for care of magical creatures showed it to point out the various wild and dangerous things that inhabited the magical world, with a stern warning that no student under any circumstances was to attempt to speak with a dragon, or Merlin forbid attempt to ride on one. Luna did get a bit of backtalk from people who thought she was an easy target without her 2 powerful friends there to protect her, but those people were shocked to find that at the next meal they could not gain access to any form of food but white bread and water, no matter how hard they tried. Luna thanked the elves who made that happen kindly and said that it was all right, she could fend for herself. The elves of Hogwarts agreed, somewhat grudgingly, but among themselves they were keeping an eye on the young woman. Unfortunately, there were others keeping an eye on her as well. Every couple days she was in contact with Hermione or Harry, and they encouraged her in her studies and frequently helped her find new obscure magics and artifacts to help her studies, and this filled the young woman's heart with happiness, not so much about the books and artifacts, but that someone loved her for who she was, no matter how weird. She had also, at the counsel of Madame Pomfrey, began therapy with Mr. Cromwell, the man who had helped Harry organize his mind, as well as having helped her mother in the years past. After she had formed strong enough containment for her gifts, her ability to see potential realities, her jumble of thoughts became quite a bit more calm and easily controlled. She had always managed to have some kind of control, but this was much better. It was close to October. There was snow lying about on the grounds and the castle was drafty and cold, a precursor to a hard cold winter. Luna hurried from the greenhouses back to the warm entrance to the castle when she heard a voice. "Hey, Lovegood. Hey, wait up, Luna." A heavily wrapped figure jogged up to her, steam exuding from his nose and mouth as he puffed like a steam engine from the exertion of jogging uphill. A boy, wearing a yellow and black scarf, his eyes and hair just peering above the wrapped shoulders. "Ah, Pant. And you are?" she inquired. He stood up straight and held out a hand to her. Justin Finch Fetchley. "Miss Lovegood, I am a 5th-year Hufflepuff, and I wished to ask you if you would like to go to Hogsmeade with me this weekend." She gave a shy smile and tilted her head as if looking through him, and since she was actively working at suppressing her abilities, she did not catch any glimpse of the potentials of this question. "Why would you ask me to go to Hogsmeade, Justin Finch Fetchley? You do not know me except, perhaps, by reputation." His face was already red from the cold and the students passing them on the path from the greenhouse to the castle. "Well, I have seen you with Harry and Hermione. And that alone says you are good people. You are in Ravenclaw, and that implies that you are quite intelligent, and just looking at you in the Great Hall, at the Yule Ball last year, it's obvious you are quite pretty, so I figured, why not? We could have fun. This time it was Luna's turn to blush. She wasn't quite practiced at the art and science of flirting, so she looked him in the eye and said, yes. He gave her a sideways grin. Yes. Good. I will meet you tomorrow at breakfast then. Okay. I gotta get to class, bye. The young man virtually skipped away, leaving a bemused Luna looking down the path after him. That night she called Hermione on her mirror. And he just ran up and asked me, just like that. The older girl smiled at her friend. Well, he was right. You know, you are smart and pretty, and I have not heard anything bad about him other than he is a bit of a ponce. So, give it a go, you might like him. Who knows? She grinned at the girl. Luna blushed and smiled back. Hermione raised an eyebrow at this unspoken admission. Sue, anything you want to tell me, Luna, dear? Not just yet. Ask me tomorrow. Quote. Good night, Luna. Good night, Hermione. The next morning, Justin met Luna at the entrance to the Great Hall and they talked about unimportant things as they had breakfast, and when it was announced that the carriages were ready to transport the students, Justin rose and held out his hand. Shall we, Miss Lovegood? She held out her arm formally, like a queen. We shall, Mr. Finch Fetchley. And they made their way regally to the carriage. Hogsmeade was bustling with life, as the students were swarming, glad to be free of the castle for a few hours. The shops were merrily advertising their wares, and the Three Broomsticks and Madame Puddifoot's tea room were doing a booming business. The shops and whatnot farther back in the side streets and alleys were doing well also, mostly from local residents avoiding the rush of students, as life and business must go on. Deals for hogs and fish and crops were being traded amongst the farm and livestock purveyors, and the various workmen from the branches of the magical world did their usual business. One brick structure was not inhabited by humans at all, but was a local outlet for elves to acquire the groceries and needs to provide for their families, those elves who still were working for families, that is. The biggest daily orders, of course, were for Hogwarts, and the daily shipments of foodstuffs and goods was quite large, as there were some 400 students and staff to take care of, not to mention the daily needs of the livestock and creatures on the castle grounds. Luna and Justin strolled along the main street and looked at things and commented on various and sundry, Justin from his Muggle heritage and Luna from her own unique viewpoint. Justin managed to ask a few pertinent questions that Luna didn't recognize as being a threat, and she kept her gift tightly under wraps, as she had been trained. So, you can see the futures that are possible based on any given decision. He was friendly and genuinely curious. She smiled brightly and nodded. Yes, but I have to know about the subject to be able to understand the possibility. He tried to understand this. So, if you wanted to see the outcome of the league football games, you have to understand football, then. At the very least, I need to know the difference between Man U and Arsenal, Chelsea or Everton. She blushed prettily. To understand the game, you have to understand who's playing. Justin took her by the hand and walked her up a back alley out of sight of the school's prefects and adult supervision. Luna was shivering with excitement, wondering what was going on, letting herself be led into the alley. Justin found an out-of-the-way nook and spun her into his arms and held her tightly for a moment. She snuggled into the collar of his warm winter coat, a smile on her face, enjoying the body contact. Luna, I really like you, now that I have had a chance to talk to you. He spoke over her head, his breath drifting away as steam. She started to reply and stand up to face him, but he clutched her to his chest. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. He released her and stepped back as she raised her eyes questioningly. Before she could speak, rough hands grabbed her and put a sack over her head and magic-suppressing manacles on her wrists, and she was whisked away by a portkey. Justin found an out-of-the-way nook and spun her into his arms and held her tightly for a moment. She snuggled into the collar of his warm winter coat, a smile on her face, enjoying the body contact. Luna, I really like you, now that I have had a chance to talk to you. He spoke over her head, his breath drifting away as steam. She started to reply and stand up to face him, but he clutched her to his chest. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. He released her and stepped back as she raised her eyes questioningly. Before she could speak, rough hands grabbed her and put a sack over her head and magic-suppressing manacles on her wrists, and she was whisked away by a portkey underscore. Filch was making the head count on the returning students, and when the last carriage arrived he muttered about lollygagging students and wastrels. He was in a better mood these days, but you had to be familiar with the man to recognize it, for it seemed that he was always angry and muttering. The crate of tools chivied up to him like a faithful dog, and Mrs. Norris, who was feeling a bit old and arthritic, was riding the crate as if she were on a queen's sedan chair. Somehow the crate knew it had a rider and was very careful not to upset its passenger. If you listened to the muttering of the old man, you could hear that he was commenting on how nice it was to start getting the path up to the castle steps paved. What with Potter's invention, the students in detention did something constructive with their magic and not use it for trickery and pranks. His latest victim. Subject was a fourth-year Ravenclaw Jonathan Battersby, who was caught sneaking into the restricted section in search of invisibility spells, which he intended to use sneaking into the girls' locker rooms. Battersby was operating the paving rune box, and had made 6 pavers in the path, a fairly good number for a fourth-year wizard. Filch called him over. Done here. Put the tools up, and before you go I have a message for you to deliver. Battersby hustled to get this done, for he was quite tired from his detention. He waited for Filch to finish writing the note. Here, take this to the headmistress, she is in the great hall now. Hustle, boy. As the boy hustled away, Filch called out, and quit peeping, or gonna have detentions with me all year, ye hear. The headmistress read the note. 2 students did not report back. J. Finch Fetchley and L. Lovegood. McGonagall sighed. Every Hogsmeade weekend, someone imbibes too much and ends up sleeping it off under a tree, or somesick, or had a fight with their girlfriend, or decided that he or she could sneak in without getting caught. She looked at the names. Miss Lovegood and Mr. Finch Fetchley. Neither of them was a troublemaker or excessively out of control. These 2 hardly ever gave her problems, not like Potter or the Weasleys. She looked to the Ravenclaw table and gestured to Miss Pottle, who came up to the head table in answer. Yes, headmistress. Miss Pottle, do you know anything about Miss Lovegood staying in Hogsmeade? No, ma'am, I know she went this morning, but I didn't know if she came back or not. I don't recall seeing her this evening. She looked over her shoulder and gave the Ravenclaw table a quick scan. Padma Pottle took her promise to Harry seriously, and intended to keep that promise and look out for Luna. Excuse me, headmistress. She pulled out her mirror and activated it. Luna Lovegood. Silence. Luna Lovegood. Respond. Now she looked very worried. She pushed another rune and called. SG table, has anyone seen Luna Lovegood? This activated. Message waiting. Alerts for all the members of the Smart Girls table, and since all of these young women were on the forefront of accepting new technology, there was an instant response. Padma expanded her mirror and answered each in turn. Daphne. I saw her in Hogsmeade, she looked happy with that Hufflepuff. Tracy. I saw them leave the 3 broomsticks and head towards the business district. Lillian Moon. I was in the last carriage, and I didn't see them. Sue Lee. Padma took several more reports and noticed that Hermione was waiting. She closed out all the other calls and answered. What is going on? Padma, is Luna missing? Hermione's face showed concern. Sorry, Hermione, I didn't want to bother you, but it seems that Luna and Justin Finch Fetchley did not return from Hogsmeade today. Headmistress McGonagall was asking me if I saw her, so. Hermione interrupted. Who is the last person to see her, do you know? Of our group, Tracy Davis saw them heading away from the carriages towards the business district of Hogsmeade. Lillian Moon said she was in the last carriage and they did not return. Hermione looked off screen as if interrupted by something. Harry is with the newly hatched Shala, but I think I can get away for a while. I'm coming there within an hour, please tell the headmistress. Padma was about to say something, but Hermione was not there. In fact, the mirror was abandoned, still activated, and off in the distance she could see Harry and Hermione herding a feisty young dragon back into the nest. The flow in the headmistress' office flared and Hermione, backed up by Lupin, came through the green flames. And then 4 more people as well, armed and dangerous-looking lichens under his command. Good evening, headmistress. I hope it is acceptable that I brought some people from our security detail to help in the search. Surprisingly, to McGonagall it was not Lupin talking but Hermione. This is acceptable, Miss Granger. Under the circumstances, I am however displeased with you not returning to school this semester. Hermione had the grace to blush. Priorities, headmistress, priorities. Harry and his needs will always be my first priority. Shala needs Harry, and Harry needs me, ergo, I am helping Harry with Shala. When it becomes apparent I can return to Hogwarts, I will do so. However, the priority now is Luna. What can you tell us? Headmistress McGonagall sighed. I suppose you know that Justin Finch Fetchley asked her to go to Hogsmeade with him. Hermione nodded. I spoke with her yesterday about it. In fact, now would be the time she was going to call me and tell how it went. So what happened? Lupin was whispering to his sub-vocal mic, transferring information to his remote agents. There were 6 agents scouring Hogsmeade for any evidence of foul play or just plain youthful exuberance. These 6 were also familiar with Luna's scent, as she had met them at one point or another in their security detail guarding her father. They failed to return with the carriages, and Mr. Filch was checking students in, and their name was on the list as absent. Lupin interrupted. Excuse me, ladies, my agents have found something. He opened the mirror to widescreen and turned the sound on so everyone could hear. Found him stuffed behind a corral with the hogs. Looks like he was stunned and obliviated. No sign of Miss Luna. Hermione spoke. Is there any magic traces obvious? Apparition, portkey, anything? This is the hardest part of Hogsmeade, to trace anything, Miss Hermione. The corrals portkey out over 100 shipments a day. Between the dragon, the spiders and the magical populace, a lot of pork and beef get shipped, sorry. A look of horror began to creep up on Hermione's face. They wouldn't send her to the spiders. Another agent chimed in. I checked that, Miss H. The livestock portkeys have to be individually set and the elves in charge take their jobs seriously. No humans get transported to Spider Island by accident or on purpose. Everyone in the room sighed. Lupin spoke. Good, good. Keep looking and keep us informed. He shut the mirror down and turned to the other agents. Jimmy, you can sniff out better than any lichen I know. Go see what you can do. You others, check Finch Fetchley's quarters, but get permission from Professor Sprout before you do go. The 4 lichens sprinted on out of the room and went about their orders. Report. The lichen agents had arrived from Hogsmeade transporting the stunned and obliviated Justin. Mr. Finch Fetchley is being looked over by Madame Pomfrey, and when he is released to our custody we will take him to headquarters for interrogation. Lupin nodded. Good job. Anything from his quarters? The 3 investigators nodded. We examined everything in situ, and photographed it all, and have collected the pertinent objects. Jimmy found some hidden things that all of us overlooked. He is really good. Lupin smiled at the youthful exuberance of his team. Anything from the neighborhood. The leader of the squad spread out the battle map of Hogsmeade and expanded an area. As far as we can tell, the couple came this way and ducked into this cove as if to snog. Someone came from this direction and attacked them. And this, I think, is the damning evidence. There is a portkey trace that we can't totally account for, even in spite of what I told Miss Hermione. It looks as if he backed up when the unknown attacked and let them take her. I don't know if it can be accounted to cowardice or complicity. Lupin pondered this as Hermione entered the room. She stood next to the ex-professor and laid into the agent. If I find you deliberately withheld information from me I will be quite angry with you. You may answer to him, but he answers to Harry and me. Got it. She never raised her voice, but the agent did indeed. Get it? The lichen stood at attention like the soldier he was and answered. Ma'am, yes ma'am. Everything. I want to see everything you have, now. You first. She pointed at the agent. Ma'am, we arrived at Hogsmeade insertion 1850 hours, divided the streets off in sectors, and covered every nook and cranny as quickly as we could. The lichens had arrived at the Hogsmeade station, as it was a good starting point. On one side was Hogsmeade, on the other side was fields of barley and wheat, up on the foothills around the town livestock was grazing. Within 10 minutes one of the agents found a trace of Luna. They were all familiar with her, and her particular scent, as they had all been on Lovegood protection detail earlier that summer. The lichen nose was an acid even when not transformed into a werewolf, and since being hired on by Harry's consortium, they had had training to increase their skills in tracking, investigating, identifying threats. Luna's trace, along with an unfamiliar male trace, was coming from a side street, and the searchers were careful to not disturb any evidence they found. One of the team was floating overhead on a broom, wearing specialized glasses which showed a heat signature. He could see footprints and what appeared to be an attack from the blind side, at least apparently so. He swung around over the hog pens, and there, mixed in with the rising heat of the porcine livestock, he saw a human body, thrown carelessly behind a fence. Over there. Someone. Here, catch. He quickly photographed the unconscious teen where he lay, and then used his mobile corpus and lifted the teen into the waiting arms of his partners. And then we brought him here to be checked out. Danny, Sean and the lads are still searching the town, interviewing anyone, elves, the hag, anyone who can speak and see. Give it 1 more hour and pack up. I doubt there is any other evidence to be found. Yes, sir. The agent saluted and left, leaving Hermione alone in the room with Lupin. The older man sat there watching Hermione, who sat motionless, except for her eyes skipping over the evidence, her mind whirring like a machine, trying to collate all the information without any kind of guide or reference point. She is as special to you and Harry as you and Harry are to each other. It wasn't a question. Hermione's eyes flicked towards her former professor. She took a deep breath and sighed. Yes, we'll find her. Luna. Without mental protections, without her wand, mirror, clothes or anything she had with her. She woke to find herself dressed in a simple cotton shift, closer to a hospital robe than an actual dress. On her wrists and ankles, metal bands, iron and something else, inscribed with magic suppressing runes. Even her radish earrings were gone. She looks around. A simple room. A bed, a toilet, a sink with a cup attached by a chain. A chair with a table. Bolted to the floor. A door which was standing open. She was very thirsty and quietly tiptoed over to the sink to get a drink. No windows or other ways to escape. A prison. A voice crackles from a spot on the ceiling. Miss Lovegood, you are awake. Proceed to the next room. Now. It was an order. She looked around nervously, hyper-aware that she had no underwear on, wondering what was going to happen. She was partially through the door when it slammed shut behind her, hitting her in the back and forcing her to stumble into the room. There, a black leather chair, mounted solidly to the floor, facing 21 television screens. 3 rows of 7, with the center screen in the center row bigger than the others. Sit in the chair. Whoever was speaking expected instant obedience. Luna sniffed. Who are you? Why are you doing this to me? What do you want? You will do as you are ordered or it will not be well for your father. Observe. The center screen came into focus and Zeno Lovegood was strapped to a chair similar to the one in front of her. His head was rolling around as if he were drunk. A buzzer sounded and his body stiffened as if he were being electrocuted, for that is exactly what was happening. After one extremely long second, he collapsed limply on the chair, a groan escaping from his lips. Now, Miss Lovegood, get in the chair. She hesitantly sits in the chair, and as soon as she sits in the most natural position, a hum begins and her arms and legs are snapped into position and held there by electromagnets. Daddy. Daddy. Can you hear me? Daddy. He cannot hear you, Miss Lovegood. You can speak to him based on your performance. Perform well and you can have 1 minute speaking. Perform poorly and he will receive more shock treatments. Do you understand? Luna hesitantly nodded. Verbal answers, Miss Lovegood. Yes or no, do you understand? Yes, I understand. Good. First lesson. Pay attention to screen number 1. Each screen has a corresponding number. As the data is shown on each screen, you are required to make buy or sell decisions based on your perceptions of each. The point of this exercise is to maximize profit, to make the most money on each and every transaction. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. You have to make 3 correct decisions each hour. If you fail to make correct decisions, your father will suffer the consequences. Observe. On the center screen, the electricity arced and small arcs of lightning danced on the man's skin, leaving smoking burns. The time of this burst was 3 seconds, and Zeno Lovegood lost control of his bowels and bladder. Your first hour begins now. A countdown clock appeared in a split screen with the image of the stunned Zeno Lovegood. Luna had to work very hard to rip her eyes away from the image and force herself to look at the data streams on various market movements. Each screen showed the current price, the historical high, low and daily movement for the previous year. She watched for a while, hyper-aware of the countdown clock, and made a decision. Screen 7 buy, stop at 11 3/4. Screen 2 sell half of available stock. Screen 17 buy at 1212 and hold for 2 hours. The day wore on. She made it to the end of the first hour. The second hour was much the same. At the end of the hour she asked for some water. A door opened and a white-frocked technician entered and held a water bottle with a straw to her lips. The eyes stayed expressionless and the mask did not reveal anything. After she drank her fill, the technician left the room through the door behind, out of sight and out of reach. At the end of the third hour, she had only made 2 good predictions, the third fell through, and her father was revived so he could be shocked again. 3 more hours passed and the screens went blank, the end of business for the day. She let out the breath she was holding and asked, "Can I talk to my father?" "You may." 1 minute. The sound went live and Luna could hear her father muttering as the healers worked on him, keeping him alive to torture another day. "Daddy, are you okay?" "Who?" "Luna sweetie, where are you?" "I am a prisoner like you, Daddy. They make me use my gift for guessing stocks, and punish you if I'm wrong." "I'm sorry Daddy, I'll try not to be wrong again. I think that you will find that because they can, they will, regardless of your performance, so don't think it's your fault. Just survive, Moonbeam, it will be all right." "Daddy," she cried out, tears flowing, but the image was gone, her minute was up. "Return to your room," the voice commanded. She shuffled to her room and lay on the bed. She was almost asleep when a humming seized her arms and legs and she was stretched out on the bed with her wrists and ankles captured by the magnetic field. Once incapacitated, a hidden door opened and in strolled a healer and 2 assistants. The healer did a cursory examination and forced some potions down her throat. "Nutritional supplements, you know, you mustn't get sick or weak." The healer and the assistants were masked, only their eyes showing. Luna spoke. "Why are you doing this? Don't you know who will come for you? Don't you value your own lives?" The assistants guffawed as well as the healer, who rolled his eyes. "We have you hidden in a secret location under heavy wards and a Fidelius charm. No one, and I mean no one, is going to find you. You are ours until we let you go. For what it's worth, you earned us £500 million today, little missy, you're our golden goose." Luna just looked. And smiled. The healer looked worried at her smile. Out, we're done here," he sounded angry, somehow. Harry was at the university plaza tending to Shalinad, making sure she was warm and fed, and had begun the transfer of personality and memories. Single quote. He noticed that he hadn't seen Hermione for several hours and called on his mirror. "Where are you? Is everything okay? When did you leave?" "Everything is under control. I am at Hogwarts with Moody and Lupin. We are searching for Luna." "Luna? What's going on? Is she okay?" "We don't know. She was abducted this afternoon and no one knows where she is just yet, but we are working on it." Harry began to get very angry, but controlled. "Who? What information do you have? You will do nothing until we have all the evidence. I don't believe she is in any real danger, but we are working as quickly as possible, just in case." His face grew grim. "Who?" Hermione sighed. "She was in Hogsmeade with Justin Finch-Fetchley when she was abducted. He doesn't remember anything. He was stunned and obliviated and thrown in the hog pens." Her eyes flicked off screen. "I'm going to use the little dragon and enter his mind to see if I can retrieve the memories like you did with Lavender and Parvati. I will keep you informed. Your duty right now is to stay with Shala and see to it that she is protected and the memories undamaged." "Right." Harry looked sheepish. "Right. I suppose have you tried trackers?" "She was taken by Portkey." "Okay. A Portkey tracker. We are pretty close to finding it amongst several hundred other Portkeys sent out of the same area today. It's right next to the livestock pens." He shrunk back from his anger, understanding that Hermione had the situation under control. "Lupin has his best investigators on it, and we will find anything we can. Moody is advising, and we have sent a message to Zeno Lovegood. He is supposed to be in Norway this week, so we haven't heard anything yet." Harry looked pensive in his mirror. Dobby. The elf appeared next to Harry. Hello, Harry Potter, sir. What can I do for you today? Hi, Dobby. We need your advice. You and your people know how to find a person, right? Dobby nodded. If it is one of Elf's family, that person can be found anywhere. If it is not of Elf's family, it might take a bit longer. You still can be found. Who are you looking for? Luna. Luna Lovegood had been taken by someone this afternoon, from an alley in Hogsmeade. Harry watched as Dobby communed with the elven gestalt and questioned many elves from a distance. After a moment he sighed. None of the elves I spoke to have seen her. Many know her. Most know of her, but we cannot find her just yet. Winky had appeared. Where is Miss Luna? Dobby asked as Winky appeared. Winky had been watching over Luna, Padma and Hermione the previous year, was probably as close to Luna as a family elf. Winky stood, swaying, and Dobby held her from falling over as she exerted herself. After a long 40 seconds she opened her eyes. She is hidden. I cannot tell where. She is scared and worried about her father. He is nearby. She is hidden away. Winky passed out from the exertion, and Dobby gently lay her on a conjured couch. Did you hear that, Hermione? She's alive and unhurt somewhere, but hidden. He turned to Dobby, who was worrying over Winky. Is there any way you know of to map hidden places? Say, start out with the ones we know and go from there. Dobby nodded. Yes, we can do it, but it will take many elves. Okay. He stood straight. I, Lord Harry James Potter, call all Potter and Black elves available to me. He was soon surrounded by elves. Freed elves, unfreed elves, those whose bonds had been cut and those who had not. The freed elves were all healthy and full grown, almost human looking, as were Winky and Dobby. The unfreed elves were all scrawny and stunted as Dobby had been when Harry had first met him. Winky spoke. My Miss Luna has been taken and I cannot find her. I can feel her and she is scared and worried. I need your help to find her in one of the hidden places. A simple declarative, and all the elves immediately set about the task. Each elf came to Winky one at a time and gazed into her eyes for less than a second and received a magical sniff of Luna. Having done so, each elf popped away. Dobby made a map of the UK, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England and part of France. As each elf popped away to search, more and more dots appeared on the map, each representing a hidden place. It took more than 2 hours to cover the entire map, but when it was done, they believed they had found every hidden place. As each elf returned, they reported what they had found and a list was made. Of all the 300+ sites found, most were too small to hide a person, most were stashes of artifacts, money, dark objects, and in some cases bodies. None of this was useful in the search other than confirmation of Luna's absence. An elf popped in and quietly conferred with Dobby, who called Winky. The elf showed them the memory of what he had felt and seen, but that there was an elf ward keeping him out. 20 minutes later, Lupin and a full squad of Lycans paused to look up at the 20-story building in the center of London. Hermione was there as well, dressed in her armored jacket. Harry was still busy tied to dealing with Shala, so she did this all on her own. In fact, she wouldn't even tell Harry about it until much later. The squad infiltrated the building, the Rossrock building, she idly noted. She walked up to the security desk and spoke top the guard. Do you know if Mr. Xavier Finch-Fletchley is available? I need to speak with him. The guard quirked an eyebrow. And who are you that you need to speak with the likes of Mr. Finch-Fletchley? He doesn't see just anyone. His son is a classmate of mine and has been taken in by the police as a suspect in an abduction and possible murder. You would do well to let him know I am here. The security guard made a call, and shortly Hermione was surrounded by several men in black suits and sunglasses. 5 guards for just me. I'm insulted. The dour-faced men just looked dour. Follow me, please. She followed them into a large mirrored elevator. By followed, of course, meant she was surrounded at all times. The doors closed. The one who spoke did so again. Wand, please. Indifferently, she pulled a wand out of her sleeve and handed it over. And the one in your right boot as well. She gave him her own dour look and pulled it out. She rolled her eyes, channeling lavender, and tried to put a vapid look on her face. The elevator opened into a beautifully ornate office where a world-class receptionist tried and failed to intimidate. The inner door opened and she was led into an opulent office. A tall, handsome man stood. "Hello, Miss Granger. Or should I say, Lady Potter to be." She tilted her head in greetings, but said nothing. Deep in her inner ear, a quiet voice spoke from a charmed ship. "We are in position. Mr. Finch Fetchley, you have my friend Luna. I want her back, and her father Zeno as well. I want her back unharmed and in perfect condition." The man, who looked quite like his son, only older and somewhat more distinguished. "You have quite the nerve to come here and speak like that to me, Missy. I am a powerful man. I control billions of pounds in commerce every day. I could buy and sell your father and UK Dental on a whim if I chose to. What I am saying here is that I don't intimidate well, if at all, and there is nothing you have that scares me. Whether I have your friend or not is irrelevant and there's nothing you can do about it. So, you perceive me as a mere annoyance then? You are a 15-year-old girl. I hardly think you would try anything." Before he could finish the sentence, the 5 security agents were down, unconscious and bleeding, and Hermione put away her quarterstaff in her bag. The building shook with an explosion. "My people are taking the building, and you with it. You have stood against me and my family and crossed the line when you took Luna. You obviously are a wizard or have one who works for you. I am a witch and my betrothed is a wizard, one you should not have crossed." The man fumbled in a desk drawer for a wand or a gun or something. A wave of her hand and the desk exploded into a million splinters. The man fell back and slammed against the glass wall overlooking the financial district of London. He slid down in a heap on the floor, eyes wide, staring at the girl. She made a show of touching her ear as if speaking to a remote listener, for she did. "Noah. Yes, Hermione. Remember what we spoke of, the contingency plan for the Finch Fetchley situation. Take it down. Take everything they have, leave them penniless and in debt. Quote. Begin." She made as if to sign off. "That was Noah Weasley. Perhaps you know him. He controls the biggest and most powerful industrial group in the world, as well as all the associated businesses that provide food, schooling, services, energy, the works. That Noah Weasley. He works for Harry and I. He does these things at our bidding. And Xavier. May I call you Xavier? By the end of business today, you are going to be not only broke, but in debt up to your ears to a great many dangerous people. So, whoever it was that advised you that you could take a friend of ours for your purposes, well, they were wrong." In her ear. "Building secured, hostages retrieved. Get them to the infirmary. I'll meet you." She turned to leave. The man on the floor was watching the big screens that lined his office, watching as his fortunes drained away, as every short call was called in, that every mortgage came due at once. He went pale as the blood drained from his face. "How? How did you know? The obliviator that you used on Justin can't overcome dragon legilimency. I saw the whole plan. You had your son bring Luna to the abduction point, convinced that you were in danger. Nicely done that, and in order to save your life, he was willing to risk the life of a classmate. Then you gave him a seemingly perfect alibi, obliviation and imperious, who's to know who really did it? Justin was just a pawn in your game. Part of Lupin's squad entered the room, weapons at the ready. Ready to go, miss. Are Luna and her father okay? They are with the medical division now. Good. Let's go. She turned and walked out the door without another word. After action debriefing and assessment. Harry was listening in by mirror as he couldn't leave his friend Shala's side for at least another week. Yesterday at 1800 hours Luna was taken away with a portkey supplied by Lewis Grizzard, a wizard in the hire of Xavier Finch Fetchley. It appears that Mr. Finch Fetchley has a forward-looking personality, and as soon as he found that his son was a wizard, he investigated the magical world and recruited a few people who could work with a muggle. Over the last year he had investigated and found out about the gifts that Luna has, the gift of seeing potential outcomes to individual actions, and decided that this would be useful in his search for profit. How much has he invested in this plot, Nolan? Nolan Weasley laid a single sheet of parchment on the table in front of him and it was projected to everyone's mirror. According to his secret books, the PL sheet says his investment was just over £3 million, creating the rooms, the magical sinks to trap the prisoners, the torture chamber, and the runic tools to do the job. And how much was made from this exercise? This was asked by Ted Tonks, who was the head of the legal division. Well, if every payment has been tracked properly, then this made £437 million, quite a substantial gain for one day of operation, I'd say. But I think the cost is too high. This from the medical division. Is there something to report? Healer Marcus Pomfrey laid his report on the table. Miss Lovegood will be fine. She is quite resilient in her physical health, as she is young and adaptable. I find it quite intriguing how much a human can take and survive, and the opposite, how little it takes to kill someone. Healer Pomfrey, what are you not saying? I suspect Mr. Zeno Lovegood is not long for this world. How so? He was tortured for more than a day with electric shock treatment, and this has burned out the nerves controlling his heart rhythm, as well as a beeping sound, and the healer stopped and looked at his pager. A small sheet of parchment extruded from the device, and he read it quickly. He sighed. It would appear that we are too late. Zeno Lovegood died 10 minutes ago. He put his pager away and looked around. My other patient, Miss Lovegood. Is there anyone who will take care of her? Before anyone could say anything, Harry interrupted. Lupin. Have Finch, Fetchley and Son transferred to the brig and set them up for questioning. Nolan, Fleur, I want you to dismantle the Finch Fetchley empire. Leave no stone unturned. Leave them nothing. Burn the villages and salt the earth. Got it? Nolan Weasley knew Harry was speaking metaphorically, but when he was done, there would be no trace of the Muggle businessman's empire, lands, anything. The financial wizard nodded sagely, knowing that the process was already underway. I want them charged with murder by torture, kidnapping, anything we can make stick. Find that healer who was keeping them alive, and I want him charged with malpractice, aiding and abetting torture. Treat him like you would Mangale. Find any wizard or magical that helped with this fiasco and charge them accordingly. Hermione, find Luna and stay by her side. She has no family left now. She needs someone she can trust. I suspect she will trust you. I will be there as soon as I can. Sirius, take the lead on the magical side. Talk to Amelia and we will put an end to this kind of thing. Ask Arthur if he has any ideas. He paused for a moment. What am I forgetting? Hermione looked stunned, and just shook her head, not saying anything. Harry got a revelation. Excuse me, I have to call a bug. He signed off. Mail to Amorita Skitterson. Urgent. Mail from Harry James Potter. Please return to UK ASAP. Zeno Lovegood dead. You need to be here to run the Quibbler. I don't trust anyone else to do it. Contact me ASAP. HJP. She was in a quandary and was mildly thankful for having fate decide for her. Her father had gone over, and he spent all his time now as his animagus form, and she knew her mother only turned to human form out of duty to her. Amorita's father was a large sea-going beast, and now that he was old and worn out, spent his days floating in a sunny fjord eating herring and whatever nature provided. Both his wife and daughter fully expected him to disappear one day, just swim out to sea and never to be seen again. Her mother spent time, as much as possible, in her form as a Selkie, staying near her husband, and the next time she came up for short time, her daughter was waiting. Mum, I have to go. A friend has died, and they need me to run his business for him. So you are leaving us? That's what I said, Mum. You know Dad isn't coming back, as well as I do. I suppose you're right, dear. Yes, Mum. You need to go to him. Don't worry about me, you go with him. If you came back, I will be here for you, but I want you and Da to be happy. If you're sure. The woman hugged her mother. Go, Mum. I have put wards on the house to inform me of your condition, and I am leaving a communications mirror here as well. She really didn't think there was much chance had her mum would use it, but it's the thought that counts. When are you leaving? In a few minutes. They really need me. So you have changed who you are, have you, Rita? She was somewhat embarrassed at her previous persona. I am using the name you gave me, Mum. I need to live up to that name. I want you and Da to be proud of me. The older woman hugged her daughter. We have always been proud of you, Amorita. It's what a parent does. She kissed her daughter on the forehead and stepped back. Her body shifted into her Selkie form and slipped off into the water. The last that Rita saw of her mum was a tailfin flip in the air. Fleur Delacour and Nolan Weasley worked almost around the clock going through the former XFF investments and had interns going through all the messages and transactions for each of the clients of this group, and not surprisingly, found evidence of corruption and underhanded deals, of things skirting the edge of legality. Once that part of the plan was in place, each part of the investment portfolio was packaged and sold off as quickly as possible, making sure that none of the proceeds made it back to the XFFI company. At first Fleur asked if this was ethical to do, and Nolan informed her that he was in the process of acquiring all the investments at pennies on the pound, and indeed he held the different investments legally. He showed her how to do this and she took to it like it were her trade for decades. To the point that the elder sat back and watched. At the end of business for the day, they were going over the day's numbers, and gearing up for the American cycle, and then the Asian markets. Nolan asked Fleur how it felt. She pondered for a moment and spoke. Etait assez grissant, comme si j'étais un prédateur en chasse, un guépard attaquant une gazelle. He just nodded. Oui, il est tout à fait un plaisir, n'est-il pas? It was quite exhilarating, as if I were a predator on the hunt, a cheetah attacking a gazelle. Yes, it is quite a thrill, isn't it? So there we have it. The one who plotted and the one who abducted Luna with profit in mind. So, if Xavier Finch Fetchley had been a wizard, he most likely would have been a Slytherin, ambitious and cunning. Driven by profit by whatever means necessary. Did anyone catch that bit of Hermione's wandless magic? How did she do that? Zeno is dead, leaving Luna alone. Why doesn't Harry use the Hallows to bring him back? The body is still warm. No. Harry has a Howard Beale moment and takes charge. Well, at least he starts ordering the people who work for him to do the tasks they were hired for. Fleur has a realization of the art of economic warfare, and how to wage it. Rita gets another chance to do what's right. Harry, Luna showed me some memories you need to know about. I will show you 2 things, and I want you to do something for me, please. Anything for you, love. Set a squad of lichens, goblins, guards around Zeno Lovegood for the time being. Don't let him go a day or an hour without some kind of guard, and assign someone to escort Luna whenever she is out of our protected places. Anywhere. Public. I will see to it today. May I ask why? Because if Mr. Lovegood is not protected, he is tortured and killed while Luna watches, and she will be assaulted, terribly so. I do not want either of those things to happen. Aftermath of the attack and death of Zeno Lovegood. I don't understand how this happened. Harry, you did what I asked. You assigned the Lycan security forces around Zeno, but he was captured anyway. You captured Bellatrix and put her in prison as well. How did this happen? Hermione sat with Harry on the terrace of Black University watching over Shala as she grew in size and strength. From what Lupin tells me, he refused his usual guard, as he was on a long-term search for one of his creatures, and he was afraid that the blood would scare off his prey, and he figured that one of the mountain forests of Norway was about as remote as you can get, so who would find him? Well, it didn't work. What are we going to do about Luna? Harry stared at the table in front of him. I don't know. Does she have any other family? None that I know of. We need to talk to Celine. He was speaking of the portrait that Harry had commissioned as a gift for his friend. He stood. Where is she now? Hermione stood to follow him. Healer Jalpa has her sedated in the infirmary, although she wasn't physically abused. The healers decided that it was best to observe her for a day or so. Let's go. They threaded their way through the complex of corridors to the infirmary where the blonde girl lay sleeping. Could you call him back? You are the master of death, are you not? Harry shook his head. No, the last time I was on the other side, I spoke with death and had her remove the enchantments on the Hallows. Now they are just a wand, a ring and a cloak. Nothing more. Oh. They walked in silence and entered the healers' offices. Marcus Pomfrey looked up at their arrival. Ah, Mr. Potter, Miss Granger, just the people I wanted to see. Have you found any relatives for Miss Lovegood? Harry looked down. None that we can find at the moment. We are looking and we'll let you know. Well, unfortunately, if I can't find a guardian for the child, I will have to contact the ministry for their input. Harry frowned. Although the ministry had been severely revamped in the way things were run, he suspected that there were some gaps in the services provided for those magicals in need, and he took up the problem. I don't want her lost in the system and have her feel abandoned. As head of the most ancient and noble house of Potter, I will take responsibility for Miss Lovegood until her relatives can be found. A flash of magic and Harry found himself holding a parchment that gave him authority to look after the needs and responsibility for one Luna Celine Lovegood, with his name signed on the bottom. He read the document, which stated that on this date and time he had assumed responsibility for the ancient and honorable line of Lovegood, which was signed over 3 years before by Zeno Lovegood. It read in part, I, Xenophilus Lovegood, upon consultation with the Oracle of Delphi have decided that it is in the best interests of my beloved daughter Luna Celine Lovegood, to create this document and leave it in the care of Pythia, my aunt. In the event of my death, I know not the circumstances, but Pythia says that it will give Luna the best chance for a happy life. Harry was astounded to see the signatures and dates on the document and wondered at the magic that found its way to here. He handed the parchment to Hermione, who scanned the legalese written there. He closed his eyes in pain, wondering what exactly he had done to deserve this. He took a stab in the dark. Healer Pomfrey, assume that I was able to bring back the spirit of Zeno Lovegood to his body, and bind them back together. Could he be revived? Pomfrey pulled out a clipboard and looked at the documents there. This is the autopsy report on the late Mr. Lovegood. In short, no, his body was too badly damaged by the use of electricity in torture. His heart is literally burned, as well as a major part of his nervous system. We don't have the capability to repair that kind of damage at this point. We might have, if he was still before the point of death, but now it's too late. Sorry, he snapped the clipboard shut and put it back on its hook. It was a long shot anyway. I don't really feel comfortable pulling people back from the afterlife anyway. I'm glad the Hallows are gone. One less thing to worry about. Oh well, I will. He received a poke in his side. He looked at Hermione and took her by the hand. We will do the best we can and provide for our friend. So how is she? Is very important to us. So, he indicated the document. How is she? Luna was dreaming. Love, we will be waiting for you, but we don't want you to come here for a long time. She felt her mother's arms embrace her, and her father's as well. She was crying. But I will be all alone. No one will want me. They will call me names and forget me. Zeno squeezed his wife and child. No, you will be loved. You will have a family. You will have a good life, love. Please believe me. But I don't want to leave. I'm scared. Daddy, Mummy. Don't make me leave. It's time, Luna love. I will come to you in my portrait, okay? She cried some more. Yes, Mummy. Just remember we love you. Now go. I arranged a home for you 4 years ago. After I lost your mother, they will love you as their own. Who? Just go, love. And her parents faded into nothingness. Luna gasped and cried out, Mummy, as she awoke with a start. Hermione held the young girl tightly as she gasped for air, and Harry hovered. Not entirely sure of what to do. Harry started to advance and lay hands on Luna, to comfort her in the only way he could think of at the moment, but Hermione waved him off, mouthing to him, not now. So he hesitated, and nodded in assent. Inside, Hermione was fretting over the right thing to do. Her friend had just lost her father and now was effectively an orphan at the age of 13. A myriad of possibilities whirled through her mind, and she grasped onto one with both hands. She whispered over Luna's shoulder to Harry, call my mum and dad, they'll know what to do. Having a course of action, Harry opened the mirror connection and was soon giving Jake and Miranda warning to expect an elf in short order to transport them. Winky had finally appeared, as she had taken Luna as her own, after having watched over her for the previous year in school. The elves catalogued all the hidden places to be investigated as soon as possible, and passed on the information to the security department. Luna clung onto Hermione. She had stopped crying and was now just sniffing and red-eyed as Jake and Miranda arrived in the room. Harry had briefed them on what to expect, and they were familiar with both Luna and her father, as well as Celine, as they had spoken to her portrait and her spirit. Miranda put her arms around the two girls and Jake put his arms around that group, with Luna at the middle. Sirius and Amelia were in the office of the head of the DMLE. What are the charges that we can come up with that will legal stop this kind of thing from happening again? Amelia shook her head. Nothing I can see, that wouldn't cause problems. The wizard had a contract, though verbal was binding, as he swore on his magic, the mugger. Mundane had it sewed up tight, using language created by his solicitors. All we can do is put out the word that if a wizard is found committing a criminal act on either side, magical or mundane, they will pay to the fullest penalty of the law. We can't stop collaboration in the name of the secrecy anymore, just that they can't deliberately break the secrecy. Finch Fetchley knew all about the magical world through his son, and apparently from some squib forebears as well. Sirius thought about it for a moment. If there were, say, an oversight or watchers committee watching business deals, collaborations, and the like, similar to the SEC overlooking the financial markets. Amelia looked out the windows over the city. We will have to run the whole idea past the legal department. I hesitate to make more laws restricting business and fair trade. We just went through a revolution and coup d'etat to eliminate unfair and restrictive laws. Sirius sighed. I have to make some calls. He activated his mirror and began. Andy, Ted, I need your advice on the new legal and government departments at the uni. Call me. Dr. Martin Ellingham stood and greeted Miranda and Hermione, as they escorted Luna into his office. Dr. Ellingham, a tall and dour-looking man, who looked as if he were made out of putty in the vague shape of a man. His ears stuck out unevenly, his legs were uneven and his fingers trembled as he sat down. 1. Miss Lovegood, Mrs. and Miss Granger, I am pleased to meet you all, and I hope that I can be of some help to you. Miranda began to speak, but was interrupted by her daughter. Dr. Ellingham, before we begin, I want to know why you think you are qualified to help my friend Luna. She is very important to my betrothed and myself as well as the rest of my family. She took a breath. Your biographical data doesn't really tell any reason why you are considered the foremost authority on stress and grief. Ellingham smiled and tapped his fingers together. I understand Miss Lovegood has had some training and assistance from Mr. Alexander Cromwell. Luna nodded. Well, Alexander trained me as well, and in so doing he saved my life, although it was an unintended consequence. What he taught me was essential in helping me survive my own trauma. He continued. My mind was broken when I was a victim of the torture of our recently deceased Dark Lord. His eyes acknowledged the efforts of Harry and Hermione. The former Dark Lord broke my mind and I had to protect it. In the process, I had saved the parts of my mind separately, and thus was able to deal with each part of the damage to myself in stages, and thus was more easily able to understand the process. Hermione looked at the man with a question in her eyes. Process. Yes, Miss Granger. Grief is dealt with in many ways, but the stages of grief are the same. Each person deals with them in different way, and I intend to help Miss Lovegood deal with each of the stages in her own ways, and help her heal from the pain. Stages. He sighed. There are 5 stages to grief. Denial. This can't be happening to me. Anger. Why is this happening? Who is to blame? Bargaining. Make this not happen, and in return I will underscore. Depression. I'm too sad to do anything. Acceptance. I'm at peace with what happened. Luna finally spoke. I don't want to forget my father. You can't make me. She thrust her face into Miranda's shoulder and the woman held her tightly. Ellingham answered kindly. We will not be making you forget your father, or his memory or anything of the sort. All we are going to do is help you to deal with the pain of losing his presence and his love for you, Luna. Let's start with the denial. When I was held for those 4 months being tortured by the creature and his followers, one of the last things they did to me before he was banished the first time was to vanish all my bones. All of them. You see this stiff suit I wear, it is what keeps me in shape, and allows me to walk. Imagine if you can. Just trying to breath, let alone getting around without bones. Do you think I asked God and Merlin and anyone why me? Why now? Many times I wish I could slouch around in a t-shirt and shorts instead, but that's just a personal thing. Tell me how you feel, Miss Luna. Eventually Hermione and Miranda felt comfortable enough to let Luna's counseling continue. The couple was waiting in the outer office, waiting for Luna's therapy session to end. Both were using their mirrors to communicate with various and sundry people around the world. All right, just so you understand, from this day forth my official residence is Potter's Keep. It is the most secure place I can think of right now. Yes, if you need to contact me, use the mail drop through Gringotts. For a fee, the goblins will do anything legal and some things not so legal. He nodded. Okay, bye. He closed the contact on the mirror as Hermione continued her conversation with her mother. I will, Mum, okay. If we have any problems, I'll call you. Love you, bye. She slouched back on the office couch with the mirror in her lap and sighed. Mum says she is too young to be a grandmother, and that I'm too young to be a mother. What are we going to do, love? We will take care of Luna as if she were our little sister, and protect her and love her like she was born as our sibling. He leaned over and put his arms around her. If we need help watching over Luna, we will ask the experts, your mum and dad, since you turned out pretty good, I'm sure their advice to us will be good. Hermione was about to reply but was interrupted by the inner office door opening. Luna came out, followed by the stiff gait of Dr. Ellingham. Luna ran into the arms of her faux siblings and huddled there. Dr. Ellingham spoke. I will see you Tuesday, Miss Luna, same time. Work on those exercises please, it will help, I promise. Hermione wrote a note on her mirror, using the calendar schedule function, and put it away, thanking the Dr. Healer for his help. Harry took out his portkey and the three of them held each other and vanished from the office. Ellingham sighed and shook his head and stumped back into his office, and through into a private room behind. He stood next to a large bowl and, having touched a button on his collar, his suit opened up like a zipper and he flowed out of the suit into the bowl. The threesome landed at the portal of Potter's Keep. The first thing Harry noticed was that the rail he had requested had been installed on the opening side of the stone tower. Hermione unconsciously moved away from that side of the hall, even though she now had flying skills and was proficient with those skills, some would say very proficient, as she had received invitations from several Quidditch teams based on her recent flight with the Rock. Nevertheless, she still was cautious around heights, and the opening to the outside sky surely was a height to be respected. She once calculated how long it would take to hit the ocean below and shuddered at the thought. Come on, Luna. You're staying with us. I had the staff make you your own private room in our quarters, and the keep is probably the most secure place on Earth, so you will be safe here, and we also have an enormous library for you to explore. The couple went through the corridors to the private area holding the blonde girl between them. They stopped at the door and Harry laid his hand on it, indicating Luna to do the same. Luna Celine Lovegood has full access at all times. This is her home. The door pulsed with a red light and the runes faded after a second. Harry pushed the door open and the females entered the door ahead of him. Winky was already there, and had made tea and a light meal. Luna saw the elven woman and ran to her, enveloping her in a hug. Welcome home, Miss Luna. I have your room ready for you. The elf woman extricated herself from Luna's grip and took the young girl by the hand. Come with me. Harry and Hermione just stood, in awe of the take-charge attitude of the former house elf. I have a surprise for you. Mr. Harry made sure for it to happen. They disappeared into a private suite of rooms. A bedroom, a private bath, a study office, whatever room. Here's what I wanted to show you. Mr. Harry had Miss Harrison get this done right away. Winky had Luna stand in front of a cloth-draped tripod. She pulled off the cloth and Luna gasped. Hello, Luna love. Zeno and Celine Lovegood stood arm in arm, beaming at their daughter. Mummy. Daddy. Ellingham introduces Luna to one of his other patients, a young man whose father was killed in a very public terrorist attack. The father threw himself over his wife and child and they survived, but the man himself died. In the same attack his mother was injured seriously and she retired from her duties, leaving the boy's mother to fill in. The boy in question was Edward, the heir apparent of the King of England, and his father had only been king for a few years, since right after his parents married. His grandmother had been queen for almost 50 years before him, and now it was down to young Edward. Edward and Luna became very close friends and spent as much time as they were allowed to be together. Harry and Hermione pulled back to the keep and continued their education, Hermione specializing in healing and medical training, on both sides of the magical divide. She took 3 years of intensive training with the best healers in the UK and the continent, as well as a full-time internship with the mundane medical community. How? By using a time turner. Of course. One day on, one day off. Harry spent much time repairing his mental damage, and kept his promise to Hermione, only keeping 7 avatars working in his mind at any one time, and he spent the time-turned days with Hermione as well. On his normal day, he did the daily business of life, taking care of business, literally, since he had created an empire of sorts, not to mention that which he had inherited from his parents and grandparents. On his turned day, he went into meditation and communing with Shala. He went back over the several years under Dumbledore's thumb and retrieved the obliterated memories that were left, well, what he called. Along the way he ended up creating a timeline for the old man, tracking some of his actions and plots, and if he could helping the other victims of the old man. He tried to spend time with Sirius when he could, but Sirius had a full schedule of his own. Between the military tribunal overseeing the building of a new magical government, Sirius and Amelia Bones were becoming an item, and whenever they could, they escaped to some sandy beach blanket bingo. When Harry asked when and if he was going to become an uncle to a little Padfoot puppy, all he got was a deep blush from his errant godfather. Harry posted his old bastard's timeline in the public domain of the history department at Black University, and invited others to add to it, as long as they could corroborate their additions, and it became the basis of much discussion and speculation as to what the old man had been planning. Black University grew and grew, until it took over almost a half-mile square of London, both on the surface and underground. The goblins and dwarves oversaw the excavations, and many of the wizards and different peoples from around the world participated in adding to the knowledge base. Different areas of research were opened up by the opportunities offered to the first-gen mages, and those disaffected from around the world. It became a mecca of magical knowledge, and all different peoples were welcomed with open arms, as long as they were aligned for what is right and proper. A few very dark wizards were captured trying to infiltrate, and the appropriate punishment was given. Every master around the world was given a chance at sharing their gifts, some took it, some did not. All in all, a golden age of knowledge seeking and collection. Shala spent several hours a week sharing her stories with historians, and some of the stories were so outrageous that they couldn't conceive of the events, such as the battle between a self-proclaimed god and a warrior prince, the stuff of legend. Great gouts of magic were thrown around, weather elementals were pushing the atmosphere to and fro, changing the weather patterns, civilizations rose and fell, great floods washed across the continents, magic brought up land from the sea, and sank a great nation beneath the sea. Shala described Atlantis and her people in the aftermath of the battles, where a great expanse of the continent of Africa, which had been green verdant earth and forests and farmlands, was now covered with sand and dry as could be, the Sahara. A student who had seen some of these stories took that to heart, and when he went home to America, decided to make himself a name and some money at the same time. He worked up a plan with a cohort, a developer and land speculator who bought up malls and business leases and insured them heavily. And once having done so, the student mage manipulated the weather, literally riding on the back of tornadoes, guiding them to hit and destroy the insured properties. This, however, did not consider the damage done to the uninvolved people in between, and they suffered much collateral damage. Once the American Oars captured the conspirators, they were named the Pecos Bill Gang. Over the 3 years of Hermione's healer training, Harry was working full-time on his projects, refining several of his ideas, chief of which was restoring the lost magic to the earth. As far as he could tell, both from observation and historical precedent, there was less magic in the modern age than in previous generations, partially because the small genetic pool of mages, partially because the earth was being damaged by pollution, abuse, great drains on the magical potential by the mind-numbing conformity. In his meditations, he realized that they needed to double, if not triple, the magical population, and soon, otherwise they may not be able to survive as a race. With this in mind, he decided that he would hire as many magicals as he could, giving them opportunity to marry and raise children, by way of better food, water, shelter, education and opportunity. The first and primary task was to seek out every magic-capable person they could find. In previous times, they were often called squibs or other less than polite terms, but he reasoned, if they could see magic and interact with it, then they were potentially capable of breeding and raising magical children. His ILMM project was a basis for the first big deal. The Sahara story had inspired him and he heard about the shipbreakers off the coast of Mauritania. A delegation of mages from the area came and asked him if there was anything he could do to help their people, both magical and mundane, and he decided that he could. It began with a floating island in the middle of the Gulf at the western edge of the Sahara. It was, in fact, the same converter manifold that had been used in the experiment at the UK power station. Over the next few months, hundreds, if not thousands of wrecked and abandoned ships went missing. The authorities didn't notice. All they had ever noticed was the bribes paid to them to look the other way when those same ships were abandoned, the environmental hazards and pollution threats totally ignored, damaging the fishing industry and putting assorted toxins into the food chain. The power generated was used in transferring material up and into the bleak desert, following the old trade routes from thousands of years before. It began at a mountain far out in the sands. In a crater down between the rock outcroppings, a lake began to form, and overflowing, followed the old path of the trade route, along what had been a river bed some 10,000 years before. Water that had been sea water in the Gulf, filtered and free of all pollutants and oil from spillage, turned into fresh clean water. A road was growing, paved with solid stone, reconstituted from sea-bottom sludge, following along the side of the river's path, and every mile, a steel pipe sprouted up and water flowed from it, clean, fresh water. The local mages went to this hidden valley, and began their task, building a village at each mile marker, centered around the water flow. As more came into an area, a school, a clinic, a trading post was built, and the river water diverted through irrigation ditches into fields and crops on either side of the road and river. Within 3 years, there was not a single abandoned ship left in the Gulf, and the corrupt officials in the government were gone as well. A strip of land between 5 and 20 miles wide starting far up into the desert mountains, followed the river of life all the way down to the sea, and the magical peoples of the continent had a place to call their own. Their warders kept the new country protected and invisible to the mundanes, and only those with magic could see that the road went off into the empty desert, was actually off into the green and verdant new country, hidden from the norms. The Black University was justifiably proud of their newly affiliated country, and the string of schools along the river road fed directly into the university, increasing the magical population of the world by a significant number. Meanwhile, back home in the UK, the new government was slipping into disarray, and that put Harry and his friends on a new path. He had arranged his companies in a military fashion and every employee had a rank, every employee had a duty station, responsibilities and for this, every employee received food and housing, educational opportunities, very much like the military. Since the Lycans were already organized into brigades, it was not much of a stretch to follow a pattern that worked. Jake Granger expanded his UK dental into every part of the UK as well as parts of France and the Low Countries, and at least one office in each town had a 24-hour service for those people who had pain overnight or couldn't get into the office during the day. It was also a convenient stop for the occasional vampire that needed some dental work. All this time Harry had been thinking about the tomb in Egypt that Bill Weasley had been involved in. The changing parcel runes worried Harry. They implied that there was an imminent threat, if not from an outside invader coming back to protect them, or the potential threat from whatever was inside the tomb. They decided that the threat of keeping the sealed tomb on the earth was too risky, and Shala agreed to the planned course of action. They were going to use lodestone from the Black Island and lift the tomb out of Earth's gravity well and push it into the sun. This, of course, was based on the idea that runes would work outside of the Earth's influence, and so, it was decided to do some experiments. Luna had hidden for almost 2 years inside Potter's Keep, refusing to go out in public, and so, Harry and Hermione jointly came up with an idea that would make it possible for their young friend to virtually leave the keep while remaining secure. They took the concept of the dragonfly and added it to the basic structure of a bludger that could be controlled by remote and added on layers of runes that added sound, magic sensing, wide spectrum visual and invisible. They made a series of these eyes, which were keyed into the walls of Luna's rooms, and she traveled all over with these eyes, searching out hidden things, finding the secret habitats of her creatures, a few monitoring the life in cities and out on the moors. It was not at all unusual to be in her rooms with something projected on every surface, including the ceiling. They began with a barrel-size object, lined it with every type of sensing rune and magic, transmitting data at all manner of wavelength, and did some late-night shenanigans, waiting for a winter storm, launched the payload. In minutes the package had left the Earth's atmosphere and oriented itself on a solar orbit, and the tracking charms indicated it would enter the Sun's troposphere in approximately 5 days. One of the images that everyone was in awe of was the side view, which showed the Earth and the Moon, getting smaller at a visible rate. At 4 days out, they had to shut off all the visual components of the package and plans were made for the next try. The next try was a full-size payload, complete with the planned extraction procedure, using stone-cutting runes which fired in sequence, and the dwarves helped them in that part of the project, seeing the grain of the underlying rock. Test day came and the steps were worked out, the total mass and weight was calculated and the runes carved into the correct places. The sequence was activated and a 40-ton cylinder of stone smoothly lifted up out of the bare desert floor, and hovered, a few feet above ground level. Satisfied, they made plans for the next day. The warders entered first, setting up anti-muggle, anti-wizard, anti-scrying barriers the farthest out, followed by anti-apparition and anti-portkey wards. The excavation crew dug down under the tomb and placed the packages containing the lodestone drivers. Bill Weasley, Harry, Hermione and several of the support staff were gathered at the entrance to the tomb, with the intent to seal it with both physical and magical seals. Using special equipment borrowed from the military, they had done deep radar scans, X-ray scans, and several other tests, but could discern nothing from inside the tomb, just a space of no space. I don't know what else we could do. Here, it's too dangerous to keep on the Earth, or it's a target for some unknown, or it's a target for some Dark Lord wannabe who will destroy all life on Earth. I have stated my opinion, and others have made their opinions known as well. At this point it's not open for discussion any longer, we are committed. The others looked at him, shocked, at least that's what he thought at first, but then he realized there was movement behind him. He turned as the portal of the tomb opened silently. He had not realized that when he was speaking, he had slipped into parcel, and when he said, "Open," it activated the door opening sequence. A sudden scramble and the others in the area dove for cover, and Harry stood there, enthralled. The opening was inert, nothing came out. Hermione and Bill were behind, casting all manner of sensing charms and spells, testing for biological, magical or physical incursions. Nothing. They sent in one of Luna's eyes and peered in and around the inside of the tomb. There were a pair of sarcophagi, neither of which were occupied. There was a scrap of something in the bottom of the left chamber. Carefully, by remote, a sample container retrieved the scrap, and was sealed and sterilized. Look, inside, it's the shape of a person. Indeed, inside the sarcophagus, the back and the lid formed what looked like the mold for a person. The one on the left was male, the one on the right female. There was nothing else inside the tomb, just the two human molds. By this time, Hermione had passed through the healer training, and had her first year of internship in the mundane world as well, did some testing on the sample and had a look on her face. Harry noticed and asked, "What?" She looked annoyed. She waved a complex spell over the sample and it came up with a series of numbers and letters, so she did the same spell over herself, over Bill, over the other members of the group, and finally, over Harry. "Have you ever opened this tomb before, Harry?" She looked peeved. Harry had a look on his face. "No, this is only the second time I have ever been here. You were with me the other time as well, remember?" Exasperated, she nodded. I know, it's just that." She held up the sample container. "This DNA is almost a perfect match for yours. So that means, either one of two things. One, either this thing," she waved her hand at the tomb, "this thing, sampled you somehow the last time we were here, in which case, we need to examine that one closely as well for my DNA, or," she sighed, This sample is from one of, if not, your first ancestor, because it is almost a perfect match. Everyone in the chamber stared at Harry. He groaned and rolled his eyes as he mumbled, "Bloody hell, not again." It had been 20 years, 20 long and busy years. Harry sat in his office looking out the window, which had a full field of view, a full 360 degrees looking out at the horizon in all directions. The window, of course, was an image fed through with real-time views all of the way around, a variant of the Great Hall's ceiling. With a click of his fingers, Harry could see in all directions regardless of floors or ceilings. In truth, Harry's office was buried deep within the structure of his latest and greatest invention. He had conquered matter conversion runes and had a business cleaning up the world, filtering the oceans, taking away the landfills and junkyards and sewage outlets, and reclaiming lands long lost. He had started on the site of an ancient elemental battle and taken back the desert from millennia of desertification. Starting at the middle and most inaccessible of the Sahara, rose up a fountain of pure fresh water, and rivers flowing out across the land. These rivers all started at some point in an ocean or lake that was polluted beyond measure, and the pollutants and heavy metals filtered out, leaving life-giving pure water. The unwanted matter was again filtered into long-chain hydrocarbons, metals, pure elements, and the off-fall of civilization. Harry's companies were the biggest suppliers of raw materials in the world by a factor of hundreds. All you had to do was specify what it is you needed in alloy or element, and it could be supplied, including materials long thought impossible in nature of manufacture. In truth, it was transfiguration on the atomic level. One potential problem with all this was the losses. When matter is converted from one form into another, it created heat, and there was also a certain loss of mass also. That is, matter converted into energy and thus heat is created. It was Hermione who suggested the idea, originally, to use what was basically a nuclear power plant designed to capture the heat and create steam and use that steam as power to generate electricity. It worked quite well. Soon all of Europe and the UK were powered by these matter conversion plants, and the local governments were anxious to turn over ownership of nuclear facilities to the Potter corporations for conversion, in fact paying them for the privilege. This freed up Harry and his followers to more and more adventures in creativity. Using the flying eyes that he had thought up as exploration devices, by remote, allowing scientists, technomages and explorers to enter into hostile and unforgiving environments without any discomfort at all, allowing those to assign full-time eyes to track endangered beasts and creatures, to search out hidden and lost lands while bypassing wards or protections, to track the lost and the missing, for law enforcement to watch and search out crime and criminal activity. This freed up the population to do things more creative and useful to civilization. In time it would lead to an increase in population, so at some point in the future, barring apocalypse, there would have to be licensing to have children, and it would come to pass that only those who could reproduce without birth defect would be allowed to breed. Those who had criminal behavior would be eliminated from the breeding pool, as well as those who had a propensity for genetic insanity or cancers. It wouldn't take more than 1,000 years to reach this point, but just in case, Harry made plans for that future. One of Harry's secrets was that he found that he loved to read, and much of what he read was so-called science fiction, that is, fantasies and worlds of the future. Many of the possible scenarios that he planned for he had read about in his books and that opened possibilities. He pondered the collapse of human civilization, the apocalyptic end of all things, the bright and shining cities on the hills and the galaxy-spanning empires. All this with a certain seed of knowledge that his people had come from out there, and he or his descendants one day would come in contact with those ancestral races, and he did not want to be found wanting. One of the many problems he found with the planet of refuge that his people had been on was the overbreeding of the descendants of the original inhabitants. He pondered this for several long years, wondering what was the right thing to do. He was tempted to just let the chips fall where they may and let nature take its course. It came down to, think of it as evolution in action, a quote from his favorite writer, Larry Niven. The girls talked him around it and into a mindset of, help them control their own environment and see what happens. So that is what they were doing. Along the way, of course they were also making an impressive profit at it. He looked out at the horizon. He didn't want to be an overlord, either dark or light. He wanted to work in his shop, make love to his wives and have a big family. So he delegated everything he could and did just that. All those years ago, Harry and Sirius had entered into the now crashed Black Island, which was now a pile of South African granite in a Wiltshire barley field. In the ruins of that island, they collected the massive quantities of lodestone, and encapsulated it for transport, removing the lift and motive power for the former flying island. That done, they explored the ruins and found in several parts the captured spirits of the dead prisoners and abs of the ancient Black family pirate. Sirius, as the head of the Black family, apologized to the spirits and released them from their bondage after Harry called upon Death to open up the gates of Avalon to receive the freed prisoners into the comforting arms of the afterlife. The young Gothish woman who appeared to Harry and Sirius opened her arms to the freed prisoners and led them away without a word. As she passed out of sight, she winked at Harry with a small smile. He leaned back in his comfortable chair and closed his eyes, thinking back on all the potential realities he had avoided with Luna's help. Somewhere he was potioned up and married off to Ginny, somewhere he was dead, in more than one scenario. In the first reality, Luna told him about where Hermione and Harry went to a hotel in Glasgow when Ron had abandoned them. Many of these realities came out with the light side winning, but for the most part they were unsatisfying, a Pyrrhic victory, but this reality that he lived in was for the most part the best of all possible worlds. When Harry and Sirius had investigated the hulk of the former Black Island, they found a variety of artifacts, some dark, some not, most broken and beyond use, but some. Harry had picked up a crystal sphere with a swirling light inside from the ruins of an iron-bound wooden chest. When he did so and looked into the sphere, he was transfixed. Sirius found him half an hour later, frozen, gazing into the sphere. Harry, snap out of it. Sirius put on his dragonhide gloves and smacked the object out of his godson's hands. The sphere bounced once and rolled over into the corner as Harry shook himself, trying to gain his senses. What was that? Both Harry and Sirius spoke at the same time. Harry spoke first. How long was I there? I haven't heard a peep from you in about 20 minutes or so. What was that thing? His godfather was concerned. He remembered the episode with the Mirror of Arise that Harry had told him about. I dunno, Sirius. I saw myself doing things I never did, and things I did do. I mean. He sounded flustered. Lemme try again. Remember when Luna spoke of the myriad ways, with all the alternative realities? Sirius nodded. Well, I saw a lot of those alternatives, each starting with when I made a decision to go this way instead of that, and what might have happened if I had gone the other way. He looked distraught. In an awful lot of these ways, you die, or I die, or my girls die because of a decision I make. Sirius sighed. Well, they didn't, and I didn't, so you don't have to worry about it now, do you? Harry whirled his wand at the rotted chest the sphere came from, Repario. The chest reformed its rotted wood into strong oak lined with silk. Harry picked it up and coaxed the sphere back into the chest without touching it, and once done, put a locking charm on it so it couldn't be opened easily. Sighing, he sat on the chest and ran his hands across his hair into a stretch. I found the earliest point I could see was when I picked up a runes book over the summer when I was at Privet Drive, and you remember some of the things I came up with then, right? Sirius laughed, remembering the dinner where they sat and insulted the Dursleys while being invisible to them. Yes, I remember. What about it? Well, in another version of reality, I didn't pick up that book and never learned how to manipulate runes, and I lived out my life as a pawn and puppet of the old man. That I willingly went into the forest and let Tom kill me. He paused. And I ended up with Ginny, and Hermione was with Ron, and Luna was gone from my life. He put his face in his hands. My gods, what could have happened? I'd rather stay dead. Harry snapped awake. Hermione and Luna walked into his office and the comfortable chair expanded to accommodate the three of them together. The girls. Women snuggled into the chair on either side of him and held his hands. You waiting for lunch? He said nothing but nodded, looking into his brown-eyed wife's eyes. He turned as Luna squeezed his other hand. He pulled this hand up into a key, and slipped out of the chair, pulling the women along with him. I suppose they will want us on the bridge. He stood tall and pulled his uniform into a tidy fit. How do I look, ladies? Like as pompous peacock. Hermione smirked at him. Mock insulted, he turned to Luna. And you, my love. She gave a perky salute. Very admirably, Admiral Potter, sir. As she did, her and Hermione's clothes transfigured into 18th century seamen's uniforms to match Harry's 18th century British admiral's uniform, complete with hat. Of course, the women's uniforms were skin tight and had short shorts that barely covered anything. Well, as much fun as these would be, I think we should show some decorum. Hermione spoke with a raised eyebrow. Luna got a pouty look on her face and crossed her arms. Oh pooh. And with a wave of her wand cancelled the wardrobe changes. Harry looked from girl to girl and Hermione's face softened. We'll play later. Luna dear, okay. Luna brightened instantly and jumped and hugged her older sister wife. Harry smiled at the women and shook his head. Come on. Let's go. He headed towards the door. 20 years of hard work had come to the full with this ship. All told, she looked kind of like a turnip, a 10-mile wide turnip. The upper part was pinkish and the lower part white, and it had a 1,000-foot long spike tapering down on the bottom. The upper part was pinkish, because the overlapping layers of wards and shields, all 13 layers of them, all rotating in their own designated direction. The lower half was white, in that it was the natural color of the material that the ship was made of. Long chain molecules atomically tied one to another in an unbreakable chain, woven and wrapped into a basket form. Inside the basket was the gravity-repelling lodestone, which had been encased in a crystal lattice in an arithmetically computed pattern, thus allowing more efficiency in inertia absorption and control. The drive elements would stick out of the base of the turnip at 13 different locations. The spike was a multi-purpose tool, dipping into the sea or atmosphere as needed. It was useful for gathering mass to convert to energy or materials needed for supplies, as no system, no matter how well designed, is a closed system. There would always be need for air or oxygen or organic matter to convert to food. One of the many discoveries of the research projects that Harry's companies funded was overcoming Gamp's law, the one which says that you cannot conjure food safely. Since they were working at an atomic level, they indeed could, once they had a sample to work from. All they needed was a perfect example of something, and then all they needed to do was plug in the correct atoms in the correct places in a matrix. The creators of this process called the storage file a pattern buffer, as they were Trekkies. This all took a great deal of coordination, from the IT services, who maintained the knowledge base, to the medical staff who monitored all food and potions for proper nutrient and active agent levels. It wouldn't do to have potions made poorly. The governing design of the ship, as well as all of Harry's companies, was based on a chain of command. Every magical person in the world had a place in the chain, whether they wanted it or not. Those who did not want contact with the group were left to be on their own, but each was given an emergency portkey to get themselves and their loved ones out of danger. Some used it, some did not. It had not taken long to gather all magicals into one database. In airports, in train stations, in every Starbucks in the world, a mirror was placed. Normals saw nothing but a bland piece of artwork or an advertising poster, something to ignore. Anyone magical could see the ongoing broadcast from the magical TV network, with invitations to contact their nearest office for more information, for available jobs and help. This way many were pulled out of poverty or unpleasant situations, pulled out of bad relationships or the like. There were jobs available, healers, education, both normal and magical. The support services for the ship alone were well over 10,000 people, not to mention almost 10,000 living and working on board. All these jobs and offers were made to all magical races, be they trolls, elves, dwarves, goblins or centaurs. The offer was to reclaim their heritage and their traditional places in galactic society. As many personnel as the ship needed to run its daily operations, 10 times that many were needed to support it from the Earth, not to mention the control of the reclaimed lands all around the world. Every place there was a job repairing the Earth of the damage done to it. The teams negotiated payment from the local governments, and as so many of those governments were corrupt or just plain broken, the payment came in the form of people or land. People who just happened to be carrying magical genes, or had magical potential in their bloodlines. Many of the people claimed as payment were the victims of abuse, suppression, slavery, or prisoners of one sort or another. Harry had set certain standards, which he adopted based on his moral compass, whom was of course Hermione. They came across a nation whose systematic abuse and absolute control of women was beyond the pale, and so they took action. Shortly thereafter came the day gifting the glorious leader of the nation, who claimed he was ruling as God would have him rule, was something of a bait and switch. While the eyes of the nation were on the Capitol throne where the glorious leader received a 10-meter sphere of pure gold, and as the shouts of praise rose around them, wards, impenetrable wards rose on the borders of that land, and every magical person and artifact in the country disappeared, followed shortly thereafter by all the political prisoners, hidden revolutionaries, and the biggest thing, every woman and every child under the age of 10. This left glorious leader sitting on a golden throne ruling over a nation of like-thinking men. It was less than a year before the land had been decimated with the assaults from the military on the wards being ineffectual. A row of tanks at 50 meters from the ward firing shell after shell, which vanished into nothingness. Soon they ran out of ammunition, out of fuel, out of food, and there were emaciated rags of men fighting over scraps while glorious leader sacrificed the youngest to his God and received no answers. The wards stayed up for 10 years after that, until there were no living humans inside that country. The predecessors to the ship were like stone clouds floating over the planet. Eyes carved of alloys never heard of went to and fro on the earth, looking and tasting and searching, gathering data, gathering samples, gathering history. The norms became aware of being watched and were trying very hard to find out who was watching them. Few knew that it was the magicals, very few, because every skyship was hidden from view by clouds, weather, darkness, or sunspot. Not a one of them could be seen directly, although some scientists were able to trace a signature here or there, as no matter what the magic was, physics still applied, the law of gravity was still the law, even though subverted by the magical invaders. Eyes watched, sniffers sniffed, sources of materials were found in the unlikeliest places, rivers sprouted in the desert and the desert turned green and brilliant, but these were unseen by the norms, because every reclaimed area was hidden, even in the middle of cities, entire cities were emptied and disappeared without a trace. An entire state in the North American continent was taken and the harsh environment in that area was inhabited by Yeti and cold weather peoples. Greg Goyle had turned into a pretty good wizard after he was freed from the bondage to the Malfoy family. He had learning disabilities, but with help, and once he had learned to read he prospered, taking animal husbandry and learned about modern methods and techniques, raised massive amounts of livestock of various sorts in a lot of the hidden lands. He of course did this with the help of thousands of wizards and non-wizards, a herd of goats here, llamas there, alpacas and aardvarks where needed. He married Millie Bulstrode and between them raised 4 sons and a daughter, and by all reports were happy. The hidden lands in the desert were populated by the refugees of various places. There was one region populated entirely by women, the wards and government controlled by women, the farms and gardens tilled and harvested by women. The land was inhabited by magicals and mundanes alike. The women there spent years recovering from a lifetime of abuse and degradation, many needing extensive repair to their bodies and minds. They adopted children and raised them properly, and teaching them to be human again. The leaders of the mundane world were aware of some of this, but their hands were tied, because of the power that Harry's organization had. If they wanted to break away from the hidden control of the magicals, they would suffer the consequences. A good example was illustrated when the leader of an unnamed European country was trying to force a negotiation with Fleur. The meeting was high in a tower overlooking the capital city, and the Prime Minister and his associates were all seated at their high benches making accusations and demanding actions immediately. Fleur was seated at the table in front of these imperious men, and kept a calm facade. The minister in question was glaring, expecting an answer. Fleur rose and spoke. "Mr. Prime Minister, you leave me no alternative with your demands upon our association. We must withdraw our resources from your nation." With that she gathered her papers and placed them in her valise. She opened her mirror and spoke one sentence. "Proceed with Operation 12, Mon Ami." She closed her mirror and put it away. The minister looked somewhat flustered and then asked, "What is Operation 12, Miss Delacour?" She was putting on her black cloak to leave but turned to face the older bureaucrat. "First, the electricity we generate will stop, then the water we purify will cease, followed by cessation of all food deliveries from our farms and food production facilities. All raw materials for industry are being diverted to places who are cooperating, and no one of our retail outlets will accept any of your finished goods, no matter the price cutting. Plus, our clinics, hospitals and schools are now all closing. She looked at her watch and glanced out the windows of the room as the city went dark. Our security forces are now withdrawing, and if you look toward the airport and rail facilities, the last transport just left. She picked up her valise and flipped her hair back over her shoulder. You're on your own. If you change your mind, call for me. She raised an eyebrow and with a snap of her fingers, vanished. The leaders argued and fought over what had happened, and what the fallout would be. They watched in horror as fires and riot broke out in the beautiful city below them, as large areas of the city went dark. Who knew what was going on down there? As for themselves, they could not leave the floor, the elevators did not work, and no one could find a staircase, but they could get food and water, and so, maintained for the time, while every one of them was frantically trying to contact their home countries, their diplomats, their embassies, all to no avail. They all listened as one more aggressive nation suggested that they launch a military attack against the known offices of the Potter Group. Every nation had one, out of which they did all business and negotiations, and this tower, itself was one of the group's towers, a black glass spire rising up out of the center of the city, self-sufficient and protected against invasion and assault. If you raise your hand against even one of my people, your nations will suffer, and because of your plans, however unformed, I have decreed that your military machines will no longer work. The leaders worried amongst themselves, and it took several hours to figure out what the voice meant. It took a while for the messages to get back to the leaders in their hidden places. Not one helo would fly, no engines would start on any military aircraft or vehicle, no weapon would fire, explode or launch. The chemical warheads were now filled with baking powder and sand, the nuclear materials were now lead and tin, the biology experiments that no one talked about were so much mold and cheese. The military forces of most of these nations were now armed with fists, rocks and sharp sticks. The politicians and decision makers argued and made threats to each other and toward the Potter organization, but it came to naught. They looked out windows and saw the dark cities lit with growing flames and argued about what to do. They argued through the night. Dawn arose, and as the sun came up, the delegated leader came to Fleur and made their offer. We will bow to your offers, and we will accept your direct control, for the sake of our peoples. It was a total surrender on the part of the politicians. They knew that if they did not give in, they would probably not survive the day amongst their subjects. At this point is when most politicians realized that they were the servants and not the rules over the populace. After the codicils were signed and the paperwork filed appropriately, Fleur opened her mirror again and spoke to the operator waiting. Operation 13. Please. Once she received confirmation, she snapped the mirror shut and began to leave once more. Excuse me, Miss Delacour. Yes. What is Operation 13? Look for yourself. She waved to the great windows overlooking the capital city. They did and saw no fires, no riots, no dark spaces where the power was out. By all ways of observing, it looked like a prosperous, healthy city. Messieurs, you see what we want you to see. You hear what we want you to hear. You know what we want you to know. Just remember this. We are looking out after your best interests, because until you grow up as a civilization, you need someone to look out for you. We are not Big Brother, but we will keep you from hurting yourselves. You have free will, you have self-determination. We do not control you. But if you want to rise up and expand into the universe, you will have to learn to work together amongst yourselves without regard to race, color, language, gender, or species. She paused to look each of them in the eye. There are forces out there in the universe that are greater than you or I can imagine. Some may want to control us, some may want to destroy us. We, the human race here on the earth, we are not going to be found wanting. Because we can't get along with each other. This speech was recorded and spread worldwide, and much discussed. There was an outcry against the group being a freestanding entity with no national affiliation, having as much power as one of the world's nations, if not more power, because they were not bound by any particular nation's law or culture, but their own law and culture. What most did not realize is that the basis of that law and culture was determined by 5 people: Harry, Hermione, Luna Mooney and Sirius. They knew that among themselves that they were possibly too human-centric, and should receive input from non-human races, and thus did so, asking for input from Dobby and Shala, as well as the leaders of the goblins, the dwarves and the centaurs. On occasion they asked for input from the vampires, but for some reason the vampires were reluctant, and kept to themselves. The Lycan input was a given, as Mooney had become the de facto leader of the Lycans on the Earth, as he was their employer for the most part. Fleur reported back to Harry's council of advisors what she had done, and they agreed that she was following policy that had been set out at the beginning: treat the mundanes kindly, but if they rebel, isolate them. Their job was to repair the damage to the planet that their people were marooned on, and get back into the galaxy. The preliminary report came in about 10 years after the discovery of the sarcophagus found in the tomb in Egypt. It was not so much a replicator as a sampling device. It was put in place some thousands of years before by a race who wanted to collect samples of the best and strongest of every species, and collect that DNA information into a database, and possibly be able to replicate them at some remote location. When it was opened, and they had found Harry's DNA sample in it, it became apparent that Harry had been sampled, and was now in some database. Harry shrugged it off as just another bit of Harry luck, and went about his business. The scientists investigating the artifact were able to identify almost 100,000 separate samples stored in the database, and they used Harry's sample as a kind of Rosetta Stone baseline. Going back through the samples, they identified hominids, various birds and fish and mammals and other species, including some that were distinctly alien, that is to say, not of this Earth human. This did not give much evidence as to who had built the thing. When talking to the scientists and technomages working on it, they said they would probably attempt a replication within the next 10 years, and wondered if he was willing to let them try with his own DNA. He said that he would think about it, he had 10 years after all. He did, however, forbid them from doing it without first going before a council, on the possibility that it might alert some outside forces or something. As a significant percentage of the peoples on the Earth became either employees of clients or colonists of the newly opened lands, travel became easier, the skyships became common sights above the cities and states of the world. They were based on the layout of the original Black Island, and took some fanciful shapes: great airships with oars rowing through the skies, dirigibles with open platforms manned by Victorian gentlemen, all manner of oddity, as well as some retro-futuristic shapes. Many of these ships were manned and operated by normal mundane humans, and almost all of the technology was human-made, but the basic motive drives and lift elements were sealed against non-magical tampering. In fact, if one of the elements were opened without the correct magical procedure, the internals were rendered inert matter and useless. Harry called it the shipstone effect, another thing he had learned from his reading of fiction. Useful information was learned from many places, some very surprising. In building new communities, someone in the group became addicted to SimCity, and worked diligently figuring out the optimal layout of schools, libraries, recreation, housing and jobs. This was taken into consideration when building the cities in the desert, not overbuilding, making urban areas, but putting enough of everything for the people to use and be comfortable. Farms, support business, offices, medical and educational. Harry's methods was to put a water source evenly every mile and build a community clinic school meeting space. The rest of the world was open, and the skyships now went about their business without any opposition. Cities fell. Whole nations were swept clean of all signs of civilization. Whole areas were put under cultivation, not growing crops but rather regrowing the natural habitat. Plains and early growth forest. Pushing onward into climax forest, the centaurs used their magic to force growth forward, and where there once stood shopping malls and parking lots were now ancient forests. This is the forest primeval, bearded in moss and in garments green. The murmuring pines and the hemlocks stand like druids of eld. Evangeline by Longfellow. Shala took the various herds of dragons, that is if they could be called herds, and set up nurseries in the appropriate environments, some high in the mountains, some on the Antarctic ice, some in the hot dry vastness. Each type of dragon was given their own particular place in the world and encouraged to multiply, and Shala mentored each and every possible queen so that she would have peers in the world. She even encouraged her own daughter to be a queen, as Shala had had 1,000 lifetimes and was now fairly independent. She kept her island home at Potter's Keep, since it had sentimental value to her, not to mention the tasty spiders on the next island over. The magical population grew. The magical populations had a population surge, now that the ignorance of the Pureblood Manifesto had been expunged, and replaced with a doctrine of fair and equitable treatment for all. The history of the blood wars and the manipulations of Albus Dumbledore were taught in the schools as an object lesson. By the time 20 years had passed, the magical population of the world had slightly more than tripled, and the people living in the new territories was close to 117 million people. 117 million people with clean water, good food, jobs, education, and a sense of purpose and community. Harry strode towards the bridge with Hermione on his right and Luna on his left. Luna had finally come out of her funk after her abduction and her father's death, and decided she didn't want to be the little sister anymore and told Hermione so. It took another 2 years for Harry to accept this, and at that point the three of them were married, and after several years they had between them 7 children. The kids were all in the nursery watching on the viewscreen, as was every other magical in the world. They entered the bridge and the mate sounded the whistle and announced, "Admiral on deck." Everyone stood at attention. Harry and the ladies assumed their position. Everyone looked to Harry expectantly. He sighed. "I suppose I must make a speech here. All right then. We have fought the good fight and stopped the forces of evil. We have turned back the devastation of unchecked civilizations. We have gathered our people and brought them back to their heritage. This is just the first step of many." He looked to each of his friends gathered on the bridge of the great ship. "Earth is our home, and has been so for the last 200 millennia, and we will return home soon. But for now, we are going to go and see if we can find our relatives out there. With that, I name this ship Seeker." He gave his first order. "Captain, the ship is yours, proceed." The captain nodded and gave the orders to the various crewmen who did their jobs. From the outside the ship blurred as the wards spun up to speed. The huge craft lifted slightly, a mere 1,000 feet, thus making the bottom spire float just a few meters off the surface of the ocean. On the bottom of the hull the 13 drive shells glowed with a rainbow of colors normally associated with a portkey, and with an acceleration that could not be tracked went upward, leaving behind a vacuum which fell in upon itself with thunder and lightning. From the viewpoint of 100 miles away all you could see was a lightning-colored streak which went straight up, followed by a myriad of lightning strikes and thunder which echoed for more than an hour. And then nothing. And thus begins the true story. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.